Chapter 1496. Zhang Sun Wuji was a little speechless as he said, "All right, Fengzi, don't talk about these things anymore. It's useless to talk about these things now. You should first see if there are any clues here. Moreover, I can clearly tell you that this underground palace is definitely not left behind by the previous dynasty." Seeing that Zhang Sun Wuji was so resolute, Zhang Feng also nodded sincerely. After all, if this thing was left behind by the previous dynasty, it would definitely not be so well preserved. Moreover, if this was the case, since it had been discovered by those people, it would have been King emptied long ago. Why would they wait until now? Moreover, there was no trace of what happened last night. But from the description of Old Sun and Old Feng and the traces left behind at the scene, these people clearly held some activities here, or had a secret meeting. When they finally left, they came to destroy the corpses. However, they never thought that Zhang Feng would actually find this underground palace. Otherwise, why would they just leave this place here? Or was there another exit in this place? Thinking of this, Zhang Feng couldn't help but squint slightly and look around. The fire last night seemed to be very fierce, but there was no effect here. What did that mean? It meant that the enclosed environment here was very good. Even last night, after experiencing high temperature and finally watering, there was no change here. There wasn't even a trace of water vapor or choking smoke. That also meant that there was only one exit above. Then could it be that this place, there was definitely an exit, and there was more than one? After all, it was such a huge underground palace. If there was no exit, the person who came in would definitely be suffocated to death. However, Zhang Feng now felt that other than a trace of stuffiness, there was nothing else. If there was only one exit, it was absolutely impossible here. At least the gold here would definitely have melted, or there would definitely be choking smoke. But there was nothing left here. There wasn't even a trace of it. If someone lived here, they would never feel that there was a big fire above. What did this mean? This meant that the waterproofing and smoke-proofing here were done well. That was to say, there was definitely a big problem here. Zhang Feng's face became even gloomier at this time. He took a deep breath and looked at the top of the hall not far away. His eyes couldn't help but squint slightly. He slowly walked towards that place with Zhang Sun Wuji. At this time, Zhang Sun Wuji's face was extremely dignified. After all, this was not any other place. Although this was just an imitation of the political announcement hall, this was the court they had worked together for many years. It was inevitable that there would be a trace of fear and reverence in their hearts. After all, this was the first time they set this place. If this was the real political announcement hall, without the emperor's permission, how would they dare to be so presumptuous? This would definitely be a big crime. As soon as he stepped onto the 8 steps to heaven and saw the 9 steps below, Zhang Feng couldn't help but click his tongue in wonder. Old Sun, Old Feng, you two are experienced and knowledgeable. Come and take a look at this thing. It seems to have a different feeling, as if you are overlooking the world. Zhang Feng's voice instantly shocked Zhang Sun Wuji. He hurriedly covered Zhang Feng's mouth. Zhang Feng's guess was right. After all, this was the political announcement hall. Although it was divided according to the original proportion, this was still the political announcement hall. Zhang Sun Wuji couldn't help but nod with a wry smile. You guessed right. This is indeed not an ordinary place. If we guess correctly, this place is definitely that place. Zhang Feng was a little confused. Which place? Don't tell me you're talking about the current emperor. Zhang Sun Wuji nodded with a wry smile. It is as you guessed. This place is indeed that place, and it is the political announcement hall. What? Zhang Feng couldn't help but exclaim. What kind of place was the political announcement hall? It was the center of the entire centralization of power in the Tang dynasty. It was also the place where the daily court meetings were held. This person dared to bring this place here. This person's courage was not just a little bit big. Moreover, looking at the shape and the degree of aging, it was obviously not made in a day or two. That was to say, this person had been planning this before Li Shimin ascended the throne? Thinking about it, Zhang Feng couldn't help but have a fine layer of cold sweat on his back. This person was definitely someone in the palace, but Zhang Feng didn't dare to guess who this person was at this time. After all, this was related to the struggle for imperial power. Who could be sure? Moreover, according to the historical records, the current emperor, Li Shimin, absolutely eliminated all the children of Li Jianqing and others. If this was true, then it could absolutely be ruled out that Li Jianqing's people were playing tricks. Could it be Li Jianqing's old subordinates? But this was also somewhat unreasonable. After all, this place was not just any other place. This was also the place where the imperial power was most concentrated. Even if it was true, there should at least be a trace of movement in this thing. However, until the incident, no one knew the location of this underground palace. What did that mean? It meant that this person was either a member of the imperial family, or someone who was extremely trusted by the emperor. Moreover, he could have a very important network in this imperial city, which was why he could do this under the emperor's feet. The more Zhang Feng thought about it, the more he felt that there was an inexplicable interest behind this matter. Chapter 1497. Moreover, he suddenly felt that this person seemed to know his habits very well. Otherwise, he would not have made such a decision. Zhang Feng increasingly felt that this person was behind today's incident. However, there was one thing that Zhang Feng did not understand. That was, Zhang Feng had nothing to do with the emperor. If you want to fight for the throne, then fight for the throne. Why do you have to drag me into this? Did Lao Tzu provoke you? Or, Zhang Feng could not help but think of another possibility. That was, the things he did were too ostentatious. After all, from the fine salt, the cooperative, and now the phosphate fertilizer, which one of them could not make a lot of money in a short time? If you want to fight for the throne, then you have to get the economic power in your hands. Could it be that the target of this person behind the scenes was not me, but just to test me? So you want me to admit defeat and then rope me in? The more Zhang Feng thought about it, the more he felt that this was very likely. After all, this was not just any other thing. More likely, the whole thing was actually a trap. It was triggered from here to lure the emperor out. He wanted to see if there was the emperor's shadow behind me. Isn't this a F***king joke? Lao Tzu had never seen the emperor. If he had seen the emperor, would I be forced to do such hard work? I would have gone to the imperial palace to enjoy my life. Zhang Sun Wuji looked at everything in front of him, and then looked at Zhang Feng. He could not help but smack his lips. Fengzi, do you feel that this thing has been planned since before the emperor ascended the throne? Hearing this, Zhang Feng came back to his senses. He looked around and then shook his head. I don't think it's possible. This underground palace should have existed since the beginning. Every household has a cellar. I think from the bricks just now, this person should be a rich person. Otherwise, ordinary people would not be able to afford or qualify to use this kind of brick to build houses. Since this person has this kind of brick, his family must be rich. Before I made the silver notes, basically every household, especially those rich ones, basically stored copper coins in boxes. You should be able to understand this, right? Zhang Sun Wuji and Fang Xianling both nodded. This is actually understandable, but what you said is a bit too mysterious. Although these things are true, there is no need to build such a big cellar. This is no longer a cellar. This is simply, look at this thing. Zhang Sun Wuji did not dare to say the words Imperial Palace. He could only vaguely. But how could Zhang Feng not know? Zhang Feng nodded with a dignified face. Forget it, this matter is not under our control, and we can't care so much. Let's talk about the future later. Now that this thing has been found, my task has been completed. As for what to do next, it's your business. I'm tired today, I have to go back first. Zhang Sun Wuji actually wanted to leave, but at this time, the matter had reached the final step. If he left now, it would be a bit too much. So he hurriedly pulled Zhang Feng and said, Fengzi, wait a moment. Zhang Feng yawned. What's wrong? Zhang Sun Wuji scratched his head embarrassedly. Fengzi, wait a moment. While speaking, Zhang Sun Wuji looked around and said, Fengzi, look at the layout of this place. I just looked carefully. This is completely built according to the scale of the political announcement hall. Moreover, there is so much gold in these 4 weeks. If you want to transport it down, it is impossible to transport so much gold from that cave. Also, these things need to be polished and smelted. Look at this place. Do you think it can be made in this place? Look again. This dragon chair and this screen are completely built according to the scale of the political announcement hall. I suspect that this is the work of those eunuchs in the palace, or... Before Feng Xianling finished speaking, he found that Zhang Feng's eyes were fixed on the map. The map was the map of the entire Tang dynasty, but at this time, it was particularly abrupt here. It seemed that someone was staring at this place. Although there was no trace on this map, when Zhang Feng saw this map at this time, he suddenly felt a trace of a monarch overlooking the world. At this time, Zhang Feng even felt like he was an emperor. Zhang Feng couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. What kind of King genius was this to actually come up with such a method? This was simply not deceiving the emperor. This was absolutely treason. However, Zhang Feng was also slightly stunned. He asked curiously, I say, the two of you have been to the political announcement hall? Feng Xianling was stunned and asked, why do you say so? Zhang Feng took 2 steps back suspiciously and looked at the two of them. How are you so sure that this is the political announcement hall? Can't it be the appearance of some other duke's mansion? Or something else such as the East Palace? The two of them heard this and their faces changed. Zhang Sunwuji and Feng Xianling had been in this kind of shock and had forgotten about Zhang Feng. At this time, when they heard Zhang Feng say this, they had to fool him. Well, aren't we businessmen? Last year, when the palace was being renovated, we went to transport materials. In addition to your cement, we also sent some to the Ministry of Works. So, naturally, we saw it from afar. Chapter 1498. Zhang Feng looked at the situation in the underground palace, and couldn't help but walk around the underground palace to study it carefully. After a while, Zhang Feng looked at the entrance of the underground palace, and then looked around. Suddenly, his gaze fell on the back of the screen. Let's go, old son and old Feng. There's probably something inside. As he spoke, Zhang Feng led the two of them forward excitedly. Zhang Sunwuji was so scared that he hurriedly sent a few imperial guards to go in front of Zhang Feng to investigate. Behind the screen, there was a picture of a coiling dragon cast in gold. The whole picture was like a dragon that was about to struggle out of it. It was quite strange and majestic. But other than that, there was nothing else. Zhang Feng was slightly disappointed when he saw this. This thing. He always felt that it was like what he saw in movies and novels, where there would be some kind of mechanism, and after opening it, there would be a big secret. But he thought too much. This thing was just an ordinary thing. It didn't have that many twists and turns at all. There were not so many mechanisms and things. Zhang Sunwuji and Feng Xianling followed behind Zhang Feng. They looked at where he was and asked in confusion, Fengzi, what are you looking for? Looking for a mechanism. There must be a mechanism in this place. You guys come and look for it too. This place is so big. I don't believe that there isn't a secret door. Zhang Sunwuji and Feng Xianling were speechless when they heard this. This thing. There was a secret door? The two of them didn't want to give face to Zhang Feng. They could only wave their hands and ask the imperial guards to go forward and look for it. Zhang Sunwuji pulled Zhang Feng over with a smile and said, Fengzi, shall we go up first? Let's leave this place to the imperial guards. Zhang Feng was stunned. Hey, old son, I wanted to leave just now, but you guys refused to let me go, saying that this thing is not interesting. You guys are really good, insisting that I look at it again. Now I don't want to look at it anymore. Fine, you guys want me to leave again? Zhang Sunwuji chuckled and said, It's useless to say so much about this matter now. Why don't we let the authorities handle it? After all, we know too much. It's not good for us. When Zhang Feng heard this, he frowned slightly and nodded. At this time, the few of them were here to look for clues. Now that they had found clues, and these things were related to the imperial family, the more they knew, the worse it would be for their lives. Zhang Feng also nodded repeatedly and said, That's right, that's right. Tsk. Just as Zhang Feng was speaking, in the darkness below the palace, there were sounds of stones rubbing against each other. Instantly, Zhang Feng and the other two involuntarily looked over. The three of them could not help but look at each other. Could it be that there was really some secret in this place? Found it. This There's a secret door here. Quick, sir, please move. Along with the Imperial Guard's exclamations, Zhang Sun Wuji could not help but urge. Well, Fengzi, why don't we go and have a look? Look at this time, with such a thing happening, we should know what's behind this secret door, right? Zhang Feng frowned slightly. At this time, out of this secret door, could it be that there was something behind it? At this point, anyway, he already knew what he should know and what he should not know. He had seen the magnificence of this political announcement palace. This was not a big deal. Zhang Feng simply said, Okay, lead the way. While speaking, Zhang Feng, Zhang Sun Wuji and the other two went straight to the secret door. The secret door. In fact, it was just two stone doors. The stone doors were carved according to the door of a modern house, painted with a layer of brown earth paint and white cream paint, which looked like a normal door. But at this time, the two doors had been opened, and there was a dragon head on the door panel, which was neatly divided into two halves. It was dark, and there was a faint sound of wind whistling. The three of them could not help but look at each other. It was dark and gloomy, and it was made up of long stone strips. The passage was large enough for a horse carriage to pass through. What did this mean? Zhang Feng looked at the dark hole, and could not help but feel scared. Instantly, the scenes of horror movies and treasure hunting in secret rooms flashed in his mind. He could not help but feel excited and timid. He wanted to go in and have a look, but he was afraid of the horrible scenes, such as piles of corpses and so on. At this time, Zhang Sun Wuji's face was also very dignified. After exchanging glances with Fang Xianling, he waved his hand. In an instant, more than a dozen Imperial Guards held torches and walked into the secret door. Soon after, these people stopped about 10 feet away from Lin Fan and waited. Seeing this, Zhang Sun Wuji said with a smile, Fengzi, why don't we go in and take a look? Zhang Feng heard this and the corner of his mouth twitched. Oh, I suddenly remembered that I have something important to do. You go first, I'll. Before Zhang Feng finished, Zhang Sun Wuji laughed and pulled Zhang Feng inside. Zhang Feng was scared and shouted, Hey, 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 old son, let go, I'm not going in, I'm not going in. Chapter 1499. Zhang Feng was dragged in by force. In fact, Zhang Sun Wuji and Fang Xianling were more afraid of coming in than anyone else. But since they were already here, how could they explain it to the emperor if they didn't check it out? Before, they thought that Zhang Feng seemed to be bluffing. But this time, the secret passage was too strange. They didn't know what was waiting for them in it. But this time they had to come. If they didn't come, what if there was someone inside? Then, the most important thing was that Zhang Feng had a lot of ideas. If something went wrong, they would have Zhang Feng to take the blame for them. They wouldn't provoke the emperor's anger. The secret passage was very long. The deeper they went, the louder the wind became. And from time to time, water droplets dripped from the top like rain. Under their feet, it was no longer dry ground, but a thin layer of silt. Some rats were squeaking in it, as if they were greeting them, or warning them that they had invaded their territory. Zhang Feng felt more and more strange at this time. From the secret passage until now, they had been at least 1 mile, according to the linear distance on the ground. Now it seemed that they were out of the city. After all, this place was in the city, and it was only a block away from the outside of the city, plus the distance of a city gate. They should have been out of the city at this distance. Thinking so, Zhang Feng hurriedly shouted, Stop. While speaking, Zhang Sun Wuji was stunned and asked, What's wrong? I found something. I suspect that there is nothing special about this passage. Hearing this, Zhang Sun Wuji rolled his eyes. Do I need you to tell me that? No, no, no. Zhang Feng repeatedly waved his hand, pointing to the water on the ground and said, Is there Longsho Canal outside the city? Zhang Sun Wuji and Fang Xianling looked at each other and said, Yes. Hearing this, Zhang Feng nodded and said, That's right. We don't need to go. It's in vain. There is no doubt that it is Longsho Canal outside. This. Zhang Sun Wuji and Fang Xianling were at a loss for words. They looked at each other and then said, You guys go and take a look. Is the Longsho Canal outside? As he spoke, a few Imperial Guards raised their torches and rushed into the darkness. But not long after, they returned. Replying to the 3 sirs, Outside is indeed the Longsho Canal that Lord Zhang mentioned. Some torches were found outside, as well as some burnt and torn clothes. This time Zhang Feng finally understood everything. There really was a passageway here. Furthermore, these golden stones had all come in through this passage, so it made sense. There were some things that he didn't understand before. However, it led to the outside of the Longsho Canal, which was the outside of the city gate. This person was really thoughtful. Now even if they wanted to investigate, it would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. There was no way to investigate. Zhang Feng, Zhang Sunwuji, and Fang Xianling slowly walked out of the secret passage along the passage. Looking at the endless plain outside, the three of them all looked serious. Fengzi, what do you think we should do now? Zhang Feng spread out his hands and said, How would I know? Then, you should have a countermeasure, right? What happened today seemed to be done by someone on purpose. First, someone deliberately provoked the conflict on your father-in-law's side. Then he attracted the attention of everyone here. Then, he cleared everything that could be cleared. Although none of them had expected that you would be so mean and think of digging a hole under the altar. I think no one would have thought that there would be a hole in this place. Take this hole as an example. There are at least 70 or 80 such holes and secret passages in Chang'an city, if not 100. These things are exactly the same. They are all used to discharge the sewage in the city. Who would have thought that there would be such a thing in this place? Moreover, this place is where all the commoners usually scoop feces and water. There are many people and eyes, and it is also a good place for them to cover their eyes and ears. If they want to investigate, then, the difficulty is simply not ordinary. Motherf *Ker, who exactly is it that can think of such a seamless method? At this time, the three of them squatted by the canal, looking at the people who were fighting to scoop feces not far away, their faces full of worry. After thinking for a while, Zhang Sunwuji looked at Zhang Feng and said, Fengzi, what do you think we should do next? Zhang Feng shrugged and said, What can we do? We should do what we should do. This time, I think we can use this hole as a gimmick and search Chang'an city well. Although we can't find anything, at least it can be a warning. Also, tell Laoli that if this thing didn't involve my family, I wouldn't care. But now that he dares to plot against my people, I will take this matter. I want to see who on earth this person is and how dare he plot against me, Zhang Feng. Zhang Sunwuji glanced at the people in front of him and said, Then, what should we do here? Zhang Feng shrugged and said, Since they sent money to the emperor, we should at least take some back, right? Let's go and deduct as much as we can. The rest will be left to Lord Zhangsun. Chapter 1500. Zhang Feng sneaked back to the villa. Along the way, he followed two men who were sweating profusely as they carried two huge bags made of armor, battle robes, and rattan. Du Ziting and the others were stunned. As soon as Zhang Feng entered the door, he smiled and took out a handful of coins from his bosom and rewarded them. Then he took out 2 banknotes of different denominations and gave them to the 2 imperial guards. The 2 imperial guards were so scared that they hurriedly waved their hands. This was Zhang Juyi, a good brother of the emperor, the youngest Grand Confucian of his generation, and the dean of the White Deer Institute. If they were to accept this money, even if they didn't become a joke when they returned, they would still be beaten to death. Who was this? This was the person who could feed the people of the Tang dynasty. How dare they take his money? Zhang Feng saw this and hurriedly helped them up. Soldiers, you've worked hard today, but I won't give you the money for free. I have a mission for you. Hearing this, the two hurriedly threw the 2 bags on their shoulders to the ground. They knelt down on one knee and said, Please give us your orders, Lord Zhang. Zhang Feng laughed and helped them up. Then he asked Du Ziting to bring the 2 bags into the study and the armor back. Then he led the 2 into the living room. After sitting down, Zhang Feng said, This money is not for you, but for the brothers here today. But this money is for you to do something for me. Hearing this, the 2 hurriedly knelt down again. Zhang Feng hurriedly said, Don't. I can't bear to see people like this. Also, you should know the rules on my mountain. A man's knee only kneels to the heavens, his parents, his benefactors, and the emperor. As for the others, even the heavenly king Lao Tzu, they can all stand aside. Of course, this is all nonsense. Today, what I want to say is to spread the news about this underground palace. Say that someone is going to rebel. The fiercer the news, the better. The two imperial guards were a little shaken. They were the imperial guards. Since their home was in Chang'an, and there were naturally many people who knew of their identities. If they deliberately spread the news at this time, the consequences would be. Just the thought of it was terrifying. Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, I know what you two are thinking. Please don't worry. I, Zhang Feng, will naturally reward you handsomely for this matter in the future. Also, if anyone questions you, just say that it was the Lord Zhangsun who instructed you to do so. When the two heard this, their eyelids twitched involuntarily. Although what he said was correct, and the Lord Zhangsun was right beside him earlier, the Lord Zhangsun did not mention this matter. The two of them couldn't help but feel a little confused. He didn't know what they were playing at. As for Zhang Feng's words, they wanted to hear it, but once this matter was spread out, how big of a sin would it be? Zhang Feng naturally knew what the two of them were thinking, so he didn't say much. He called out, Men, bring these two masters down to entertain them well. After sending the two of them off, Zhang Feng rushed into the study excitedly. As soon as he entered, he saw Du Ziting staring blankly at the pile of gold on the floor of the study. When she saw Zhang Feng enter, Du Ziting asked in shock, Master, what are these? Zhang Feng waved his hand and closed the door. After dismissing everyone outside the door, he rubbed his hands with a smile and squatted on the ground. He picked up the gold pieces one by one, put them in his mouth and bit them. Then, he let out a burst of laughter. His laughter made the butler uncomfortable. When Du Ziting saw this, she hurriedly squatted down. If this pile of gold was something else, it would be fine. This thing looked like a whole leg. And it looked like a dragon's leg. Now that it appeared in front of him, how could the butler not be frightened? Master, where did you get this thing? Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, Don't worry about where these things came from. Find something for me first and put this leg in. I have to treat it as a family heirloom. Family heirloom. If this thing was spread out, it would be a crime that could be beheaded. Dragon. That was the symbol of the emperor. At this time, Zhang Feng brought back a dragon leg gold. How could this not make people scared? Today, Du Ziting had already heard about what happened in Zhongshan's mansion. At this time, her master still had the leisure to bring back such a big bag of gold. Moreover, he did it so stealthily that it would be hard not to attract attention. Master, this thing. Before Du Ziting finished speaking, Li Shimon's faint voice came from outside the door. Fengzi, why are you hiding in there so sneakily? Hearing this, Du Ziting's face changed, and she instinctively wanted to pick up the gold on the ground and hide it, but Zhang Feng waved his hand indifferently. It's okay. As he spoke, Zhang Feng chuckled as he opened the door. As soon as the door was opened, Zhang Feng laughed and opened his arms to hug Li Shimon. Laoli, we're really rich this time. You came at the right time. Let's go. I'll take you to make a fortune. Chapter 1501. This morning Li Shimon. He had been dealing with government affairs. But he also heard about what happened in Zhang Feng's mansion. Originally he wanted to go and take a look. But after knowing that Zhang Feng was there, Li Shimon changed his route and went to Zhang Feng's mansion to wait. But he didn't expect that this kid didn't hear him speak in the living room. Instead, he hurried into the study after instructing the two imperial guards to do something. So sneaky. When Zhang Feng entered the door, Li Shimon saw him. He didn't say anything at that time. He also wanted to see what Zhang Feng was going to do. But he didn't expect this kid to give such a big gift as soon as they met. If it was someone else. At this time he reckoned that he, Li Shimon, must reward him with a big stick fried meat. What a scandal! This was simply a disgrace to a gentleman. Fengzi, what are you doing? Li Shimon hurriedly struggled out of Zhang Feng's arms and looked at Zhang Feng with some disdain. But Zhang Feng didn't care. He pulled Li Shimon into the house and then closed the door again. He pointed at the dragon claw and dragon leg pieced together by gold ingots on the ground and said, Laoli, take a look. How much is this thing worth? Li Shimon only then noticed the thing on the ground. He didn't panic when he saw it. Li Shimon was almost shocked. He hurriedly asked, "This thing, where did you get it?" Zhang Feng smiled proudly and said, "Let's not talk about where this thing came from. Anyway, this thing was obtained through legal means. Tell me, how much is this thing worth?" Li Shimin glanced at it and couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. Could this thing be measured by money? Was this something that could be measured with money? This thing, if spread out, would be a death sentence. Li Shimin couldn't help but ask, "Fengzi, this thing is priceless, but you know that this thing can only be used by the royal family. If today's matter spreads out..." "It's okay, let's not talk about this first. Guess where I got this thing?" Li Shimin heard this and said, "Didn't I just hear you say that there is an underground palace?" Zhang Feng nodded. "Yes. It's the house that caught fire last night. Today, Old Feng and Old Sun came to me and said that Lord Zhangsun wanted me to help find a clue. So Zhang Feng explained the whole sequence of events in detail. Only then did Li Shimin know the truth of the matter. After all, when he came here, Zhangsun Wuji and the rest were out on errands. Moreover, he didn't expect that the two of them would actually run to find Zhang Feng. But this was not the matter. The key was, Zhang Feng actually found a big thing. He hurriedly asked, "Fengzi, you mean this thing was found in that underground palace?" "Yes." After Zhang Feng asked Li Shimin to sit down, the housekeeper consciously left the study. Zhang Feng lit a cigarette for Li Shimin and said, "You don't know, the whole underground palace was built according to the scale of the political announcement hall. Most importantly, the materials used to build this underground palace are all King gold ingots. And this kind of dragon decoration extends to the whole palace." "What?" Li Shimin was shocked. He hurriedly asked, "Let's go, take me to see it." Li Shimin's lungs were about to explode from anger. Who the CK was this? This was a blatant threat. Zhang Feng saw that Li Shimin's face was a little scary at this time and asked with some doubts, "Lao Li, you, what's wrong with you? Why do you look like this?" Li Shimin heard this and knew that his performance was a little too much. He took a deep breath and said, "Fengzi, you're in trouble." Zhang Feng heard this and was instantly stunned. Why did he get into trouble all of a sudden? And if it weren't for Lao Li's promise, would Old Feng and the others come to me for help? What kind of logic was this? Zhang Feng couldn't help but criticize in his heart. This is all because Old Feng and the others came to me. I found so much gold. Even the emperor would be jealous when he saw it, right? How much wealth did I get for the emperor this time? How did I get into trouble? Li Shimin shook his head and said, "No, Fengzi, you're wrong. In fact, this matter is wrong from the root. Let me ask you, did you leave any clues in the underground palace?" Zhang Feng heard this and shook his head. Li Shimin asked again, "Then in this underground palace, are there any words left behind, or are there any traces left behind by others?" Zhang Feng still shook his head, but at this time, Zhang Feng's face changed a little. He suddenly thought of a possibility. Someone King deliberately did this? And deliberately used this gold to tempt Lao Tzu? Thinking of this, Zhang Feng hurriedly asked, "Lao Li, do you mean that someone deliberately dug a hole for me?" Li Shimin nodded and said, "These people are naturally very familiar with your and my movements. After the incident at Zhang Mansion today, they knew that you would definitely come down the mountain. And after I came down the mountain, I would definitely appear. Naturally, you would also know about the fire in the city last night. So, someone dug a big hole, and baited you step by step. And now there are only two things that they want to see. First, they want to see if you can find this underground palace. Second, they want to see if you are really greedy." Chapter 1502. Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel some admiration for these people. They were truly capable of using anything down to the smallest detail. Just who was this person who could play with the human heart so clearly? Zhang Feng couldn't help but think of all the people he knew, but in the end, he eliminated all of them. The only person that seemed most suspicious was Duke of Chun, Ho Junji. Zhang Feng could not help but nudge Li Shimin, who was also in deep thought, and asked, "Old Li, where is this Duke Chun?" Li Shimin couldn't help but be alarmed by this question. It can't be Duke of Chun, right? Zhang Feng knew that Li Shimin was being overly suspicious, so he waved his hand and said, "Why are you in such a rush? I was just casually asking. My intuition tells me that this person might know both of us. Otherwise, just think about it. He's targeting both the imperial court and me. Haven't you noticed anything? Li Shimin naturally had his suspicions. But not even if he was beaten to death would he believe that this Duke of Chun, Ho Junji, was such a powerful pair of hands. After all, Duke of Chun had vanished without a trace the moment he ascended the throne, voluntarily resigning to retire in Luozhou. If such a person wanted to rebel, why would he have handed over his authority? This was the most suspicious point. Once a person handed over their authority and resigned, they would no longer have anything to do with the imperial court. This person was also an instant man. Ever since the Xuanwu Gate incident, his performance had been particularly outstanding. Thus, after Li Shimin ascended the throne, he had decided to return to his hometown. Li Shimin couldn't bear to see him go, so he had him transferred to Luozhou in order to suppress Luozhou. Moreover, Duke of Chun had been living in the Crown Prince residence this entire time, because of the Crown Prince's matter. How could such a person want to rebel? He, Li Shimin, would never believe that Ho Junju was such a person. Then now that Zhang Feng had said this, Li Shimin realized something terrifying. What was this person trying to do? He hurriedly asked, Fengzi, what do you think? What was this person trying to do? Although the matters of the imperial court are not something that ordinary people like us can comment on, now that we are all involved, you can give Lao Li some advice so that I can prepare in advance. Zhang Feng raised his eyebrows and glanced at Li Shimin. Actually, I've always suspected that this person is someone close to us. Why do I feel that you're the most suspicious? Li Shimin was shocked. He hurriedly laughed and said, What are you talking about? I, Lao Li, am just an ordinary businessman. If I had such great ability, would I still be like this? Zhang Feng saw Li Shimin's anxiousness and hurriedly said, I was just joking. Do you have to be like this? All right, let's talk about this. Have you noticed that this person's ambition is not small? I have a suspicion that your business has also been targeted, or that someone has infiltrated it. When Zhang Feng said this, Li Shimin's heart instantly quivered. He hurriedly said, Let's go. This is not the place to talk. Let's go to the underground palace. A moment later, a carriage hurriedly appeared outside the heavily guarded ruins. At this time, the leader was Cheng Yaojin's personal guard. This place had been completely taken over by the Chang, a military camp. Except for flies, nothing else could get close. Zhang Feng had already guessed this matter. After all, not to mention other things, the gold underground was enough for the entire Tang dynasty's people to eat for a month. They didn't need to work, and they could eat and drink like fish and meat. How terrifying was this? And most importantly, the underground palace was built according to the appearance of the political announcement palace. Although Zhang Feng didn't know what the political announcement palace looked like, when he saw the underground palace, Zhang Feng already had some different ideas about the political announcement palace. Who are you? Just when Li Shimin and Zhang Feng got off the carriage, the soldier carrying a halberd and riding a tall horse slowly urged his horse forward. However, when he came forward and saw Li Shimin, he was first shocked and a trace of doubt appeared in his heart. This person looked extremely familiar, and his whole body exuded a kind of imposing manner. He didn't dare to look at him directly. What was going on? He really hadn't seen this person before. Who was this person? Looking at the white-robed young man, he also looked very familiar. After thinking for a while, he suddenly thought of something. He hurriedly got off the horse and put on a smile. He bowed to Zhang Feng and said with a smile, Sun Desheng greets Mr. Hsian. In an instant, the young general named Sun Desheng waved his hand and said, Everyone has one. Salute. Pa. The Mingguang armor, together with the turtleback fish scale armor worn by the soldiers, at this moment, burst out bursts of collision between the copper plate and the iron scale armor, making a kind of austere atmosphere. Mr. Hsian. Zhang Feng couldn't help but stand at attention when he heard a thunderous explosion. Coupled with the heavy armor and the modern military salute, Zhang Feng couldn't help but stand at attention. Hello, comrades. Of course. Zhang Feng's words made everyone stunned. They didn't understand. And Li Shimin was also surprised to find that Zhang Feng already had such a high reputation in the army. He couldn't help but click his tongue and said, Fengzi, I didn't expect you to be so popular in the army. Zhang Feng also didn't expect. Thinking about it carefully, it should be because of the military training, plus the connection of Xiaohu's leg. Zhang Feng ignored Li Shimin and saluted Sun Disheng. What's your name? Young General Sun Disheng. Hearing this, Zhang Feng was in awe. With a pa sound he saluted and said, Sun Disheng of the Cavalry Company is here. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. Li Shimin gets angry. Sun Disheng was an amazing person. Zhang Feng had only seen him on television before. But who would have known that there was actually someone here with this F***king name? And Sun Disheng was dumbfounded. Who was Zhang Feng? This was the most awesome Confucian scholar of the present age. He was an awesome person who could make Master Yushan vomit blood in anger. He was also an awesome person who could snatch blood and return a soul. He was also an awesome person who came up with a type of military training that could make you beg for death. Although this type of training method had always been loved and hated by people in the army, and there were even people who wanted to F***king kill Zhang Feng, the effects of this thing were also very terrifying. As long as they could endure the first 2 months, this soldier, at least in terms of physical fitness and overall combat strength, would have a great improvement. 10 soldiers like this, even if a general came, would be terrified. Don't you think it was terrifying? This was what created Zhang Feng's terrifying prestige in the army. In the army, it was the easiest to get injured, and losing an arm or a leg was as common as eating porridge, especially when there was war. Before, everyone would pray to the heavens and earth every day when they woke up, praying to their ancestors that they would not be robbed of their limbs. But now it was all good. With Zhang Feng's miraculous medical skills, whether it was a broken leg or a dried-up blood, it was no longer a problem. Sun Disheng was excited. He hurriedly saluted and returned the greeting, Mr. Hsien. Sun Disheng. Hsien, that's enough. Li Shimin looked at the two idiots with a dark face and said, Do you want me to arrange another time for you two to shout for the whole day? Hearing this, Zhang Feng put his arm around Li Shimin's shoulder and said, What do you know? This is the friendship between us men. Although this is the first time I've met Brother Sun, why do I feel like I've known him in my previous life? Hearing this, Sun Disheng's eyes widened, and he almost asked about his previous life. But Li Shimin directly pulled Zhang Feng inside. Zhang Feng quickly said, Oh right, I have to go in and take a look. Old son, let's treat you to a drink another day. While speaking, Zhang Feng was dragged into the ruins by Li Shimin. After Zhang Feng and Li Shimin entered the ruins, a soldier hurriedly ran to the dizzy Sun Disheng and whispered, General, Mr. Hsien doesn't seem to have any approval. Pa. Sun Disheng slapped him in the face and said, Mr. Hsien is someone you can call? Do you all know that the things underground were found by Mr. Hsien? All of you listen to Lao Tzu. Quickly send 2 small teams to protect Mr. Hsien. If Mr. Hsien loses a single hair, Lao Tzu will break your legs. Not far away, little Gizi heard this and put back the token that he had just taken out from his sleeve. He quietly stood by the carriage and waited. On the other side, Li Shimin had long been eager to take a look at this underground palace. Not to mention the layout, just the amount of gold that Zhang Feng had described made Li Shimin's heart light up. How much gold was there? This gold was enough for him to renovate Taiji Palace. The entrance to the underground palace was now completely exposed. At the entrance, a group of soldiers used materials on the ground to make a house. At least if people saw it, they would not be suspicious. Once they entered the underground palace, Li Shimin was shocked speechless by the scene in front of him. The oil lamps around the underground palace were all lit up, and there were also candles that were constantly dancing. The entire underground palace, under the illumination of the candles, instantly burst into bursts of golden light. It looked as if they had entered a dream. Stepping on the floor tiles that were wrapped in a thick layer of gold, Li Shimin's heart was bleeding. This place was right. This was the political announcement hall. And this was even more extravagant than the political announcement hall. Everything here was mainly made of Phoebesian non-wood and gold, especially the several large pillars in the hall. Those pillars were so thick that it would take 5 people to wrap their arms around them. Although it was not as big as the real political announcement hall, the golden dragons coiled around it made Li Shimon's chest slowly rise and fall. Zhang Feng was not much better at this time. Although it was the second time he saw this thing, seeing it now was even more different from the previous ones. At this time, under the illumination of the lights, everything was revealed. Luxurious, domineering, majestic. Zhang Feng thought for a long time, and could only think of these 3 words to describe this place. Especially the 2 giant dragons on the left and right. On the wall that was 1.5 feet high. On one side, a golden dragon occupied the front wall. It was like a living creature, staring at the position of the dragon throne and hissing. Li Shimon slowly walked towards the dragon throne. At this time, Zhang Feng's gaze was completely attracted by the magnificence of this place. He did not notice Li Shimon's aura at this time at all. Otherwise, he would have already noticed Li Shimon's abnormality. The 2 groups of soldiers, under the clashing sound of armor, slowly pulled out their modeo and were on guard. Looking at Li Shimon walking towards the dragon throne, they did not pay too much attention. Li Shimon slowly stood in front of the dragon throne, looked at the dragon throne, and then looked below. Suddenly, a flash of anger burst out from his eyes. Who the hell did this? Chapter 1503. Zhang Feng was also shocked by Li Shimon's sudden outburst. He never thought that Li Shimon, who always had a bad temper, would have such a big reaction. He couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. At this time, when he looked at Li Shimon, Zhang Feng suddenly had the illusion that he was looking at a leader. The aura that Li Shimon was emitting from the inside out made Zhang Feng feel a little scared. Li Shimon's words, however, gave these soldiers a big fright. When they saw him on the dragon throne, they could pretend that they didn't see him for the sake of Zhang Feng. Now why the F***ck are you shouting so loudly? What are you shouting about? Come down. That place is not somewhere you should go. If it weren't for the sake of Mr. Hsien, you wouldn't dare to go to that place. Do you know where this place is? Come down. Amidst the dissatisfied roars of the soldiers, Li Shimon's aura instantly withered. At this time he realized that this was not the political announcement hall. It was just a small underground palace. Below the hall, there were no officials, but a group of soldiers who had never seen the world. The most important thing was that he had put on makeup. It was reasonable that these people didn't recognize him. At this time when they looked at Zhang Feng, they actually looked at him with a different gaze. Li Shimon was shocked when he saw this. He hurriedly said, "You don't recognize me?" Zhang Feng smacked his lips. "I really couldn't tell. Old man, you were really intimidating people just now." Li Shimon rolled his eyes and sighed. "There's nothing I can do. I came because I was angry. Look at this palace. This is simply a rebellion. And I'm beginning to suspect that someone is playing tricks on our current industry. Most importantly, I'm beginning to suspect that there are other people's spies in our industry. You see, we have nothing to do with the palace. But, look at this period of time. From coal to iron, and then to the border matters. Although they don't seem to be connected individually, now after you connect them, I suddenly feel that someone is weaving a big net, and we are also caught in this net. This is not a good sign." Hearing this, Zhang Feng nodded and said, "That's right. I also feel that these things are too unbelievable." While talking, Zhang Feng pulled Li Shimon to a corner, dismissed the soldiers around him and said, "The point is, these people want to usurp the throne, so they can do it. Motherf asterisk cur. Why do they have to drag us in?" Li Shimon was also angry at this time. He sighed and said, "I have an idea, that is, this person's ambition is not only in the court. His idea is to control the economy of the Tang dynasty. And what you are doing now is enough to shake the entire Tang dynasty. Whoever controls these things then. And I also suspect that the steel you tinkered with on the mountain, the strong crossbows, and so on have been known. The most important thing is that they have known from the beginning." Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimon in surprise. He looked at him with some disbelief and said, "Tisk tsk, I didn't realize that you were enlightened. Yes, this person exposed this underground palace at this time, and did not hesitate to give up so much gold. I suspect that this is also their conspiracy." Li Shimon hurriedly asked, "Fengzi, you mean?" Zhang Feng interrupted Li Shimin and pointed to the secret door under the palace and said, "This secret door leads directly to the Longsho Canal outside the city. Do you know what it means? If someone wants to rebel, they can use this passage to smoothly enter the city and occupy the city gate in a short amount of time. Outside is a wide expanse of flat land with 16 royal residences. These are the residences of almost half of the Great Tang's important officials. This is not the most important thing. The most important thing is that through the Tunghua Gate, it will take less than 10 minutes to reach the Imperial City." The Imperial City. Buzz. Li Shimin's head was about to explode in an instant. Just as Zhang Feng said, Li Shimin was naturally familiar with the situation here. But when he thought of the place behind the secret door, Li Shimin could not help but feel a chill in the wine. What if there was really someone who wanted to rebel? Then, Zhang Feng naturally knew that someone wanted to rebel. But this matter was too big, and it was not the right time. The current crown prince, Li Chengqian. In history, under the urging of Hou Junji, he had indeed usurped the throne, but the final outcome was, there was also Li Tai. These two brothers had perfectly inherited the glorious deeds of the current emperor, and they had also rebelled, but the outcome was still Li Ji's. But, Zhang Feng did not dare to say it. Motherf *Ker, if this matter did not have 100% proof, who would dare to arrest someone based on these things? Even if the current emperor himself came, he would not dare to make such a conclusion so easily, right? This was the crown prince. If such a situation occurred, the court would be shaken, and if it was serious, Zhang Feng thought of this and sighed. "Laoli, let's not worry about this matter." Li Shimin heard this and asked in surprise, "Why? Do you know what it means if that person deliberately exposed this place?" Li Shimin naturally did not know, so he hurriedly asked, "Say it." Zhang Feng looked at the secret door and said, "This leads to the Longsho Canal outside the city, and all the clues are cut off here. That person might just be guessing that I won't be able to find it, and even if I did, he might want to use this thing to seal our mouths." Chapter 1504. What? Li Shimin was shocked. He was most afraid of such an ending. Every time he was about to solve the mystery, he couldn't find any clues when it came to the end. From the iron mine to the Tang family. At noon today, something happened in Zhongshan's mansion. Then here. None of them had an ending. It was like punching hard. Every time he punched, it was like punching cotton. It was very uncomfortable. Hearing Zhang Feng's words, Li Shimin was anxious. He asked, "Fengzi, does that mean there is no clue?" Zhang Feng smiled and said, "What do you think?" Li Shimin wanted to beat Zhang Feng to death. How could he be in the mood to guess? Seeing Li Shimin's bad expression, Zhang Feng said, "Didn't you see the Imperial Guard when you were in my mansion today?" At that time, I was already asking him to spread the news that the gold was found in the underground palace. Hearing this, Li Shimin's face changed instantly. The more people knew about this, the more unfavorable it would be for the underground palace. What was Zhang Feng thinking? How could he want to spread the news? Wasn't he digging his own grave? "Fengzi, aren't you a little rash to do this?" Li Shimin knew that Zhang Feng hated this deeply. Otherwise, with Zhang Feng's temper, how could he do such a stupid thing? Yes. He must be confused because of anger. Let's not talk about whether the gold in this place would attract the attention of some people with bad intentions. The meaning was that this place was inviolable. Once more people knew about this place, where would he, Li Shimin, put his face? "Fengzi, don't you think about the emperor's face? Once the emperor is angry because of this." Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, "If the emperor knows what I do, he will understand my reason." Li Shimin was dumbfounded. When had he ever been able to understand what Zhang Feng was trying to do? He hurriedly asked, "Fengzi, how can the emperor know what you're thinking? Furthermore, anyone would find your actions rash." "You." Zhang Feng hugged Li Shimin and sat on the steps of the underground palace. He looked at the secret door below and said, "Look at that door, and then look at the layout of this place. Everything here. I heard from Old Sun and Old Fong that everything was moved here according to the political announcement hall. If you were the emperor, what would you think?" "That's right. You're not the emperor." Zhang Feng patted his forehead and said in surprise, Why are you worrying so much? You only need to know that I'm doing this to get some clues. Behind this door is the Longsho Canal. There are no clues, but the entrance to the underground palace is the biggest clue. If the emperor can understand my thoughts, he only needs to block the imperial guards on the ground and the entrance of the cave. Then he won't tell anyone that there is another entrance here. He only needs to arrange a large number of troops here. Guess what the consequences will be? Li Shimon's heart, which was originally anxious for all of you, instantly became fiery. This was waiting for rabbits to appear. Moreover, the people who knew about this secret entrance were basically only those who participated in this matter. Now if the news of the gold was spread out, these people. Li Shimon patted Zhang Feng's shoulder and said, "Fengzi, I understand." While speaking, Li Shimon hurriedly got up and hurriedly entered the secret door under Zhang Feng's surprised gaze. Zhang Feng hurriedly shouted, "Lao Li, what are you doing?" "I'm informing the Lord Zhangsun. This time we must let the people who come in all." Li Shimon's voice became softer and softer. In the end, there was nothing left. Seeing this, Zhang Feng was stunned. Looking at the empty underground palace, Yi Zichen sighed. Zhang Feng's heart also became hot. How could he return empty-handed when he came to a treasure mountain? On the other side, Li Shimon led him along the secret passage of the underground palace all the way to the city gate. Along the way, there were always imperial guards on guard. As soon as they came out, imperial guards who had been on guard at the city gate hurried over. Every time Li Shimon went out, there would be a large number of imperial guards accompanying him. However, these people strolled in every corner within 100 steps with Li Shimon as the center. Today, Li Shimon came to the place where the fire broke out. It was a dangerous place. Needless to say, there were more people coming. At this time, when the guard saw Li Shimon suddenly appear outside the city, he was shocked. He hurriedly whistled a few times and then hurried to Li Shimon's side. Li Shimon waved his hand. "Go back to the palace quickly." Then the imperial guards got 2 horses from the guards at the city gate. 2 people rode 2 horses and hurriedly entered Chang'an city. After hearing the news from the secret guard, Little Gizi and the others hurried to the city gate. However, when they arrived, they were shocked to see the emperor riding a horse and galloping quickly in Chang'an city. Little Gizi was so scared that he hurriedly scolded the others to follow. However, when Little Gizi was about to leave, he suddenly thought of an extremely important matter. Didn't the emperor enter the underground palace from that house? Why did he come back from outside the city? Chapter 1505. He rode as fast as lightning. Li Shimon went straight to the door of Taiji Palace. As soon as he got off the horse, he ordered with a gloomy face, "Quickly inform Zhangsun Wuji and Fang Xianling to come in." "Your Majesty, the 2 Grand Dukes have been waiting at the door of the imperial study." A little eunuch bowed and said hurriedly. Hearing this, Li Shimon waved his sleeves and went straight into Taiji Palace with a gloomy face. Along the way, the little eunuch who accompanied him hurriedly reported the memorials from all over the place. Li Shimon felt a headache coming on. He simply pretended not to know anything. Li Shimon suddenly felt that the imperial study was too far away. He had never wanted to tear down Taiji Palace as much as he did today. In the time it took to eat a meal, they finally arrived at the imperial study. From afar, they could see Zhangsun Wuji and Fang Xianling standing outside the hall in ordinary clothes. The noise here seemed to have startled the 2 of them. They heard the news and hurried in. As soon as they saw Li Shimon waved his hand, indicating that the 2 of them had something to say inside. As soon as they entered the imperial study, Li Shimon asked, "I've been to the underground palace. Zhang Feng's meaning is that he wants the person who carried the gold back for him to spread the news everywhere?" Li Shimon's eyes were a little playful. The 2 of them hurriedly changed their expressions. "Your Majesty, we have never touched anything in that place. The gold ingots we took were all sent to the Ministry of Internal Affairs." Li Shimon waved his hand. "Forget it. It's just a little money. You can take it back. I'm just asking, what do you think of Zhang Feng's intention?" Zhangsun Wuji heard this and instantly felt relieved. "Good boy. Dozens of caddies of gold. That was a really good thing. But now was not the time to talk about this." He hurriedly said, Your Majesty, I have never heard Fengzi mention it before. Li Shimin was a little surprised. Today, when I went to Zhang Feng's residence, I happened to overhear what he was talking about with that guard. After that, I found out that this brat actually wants to use this underground palace as bait to fish out those people. What do you think? After confirming that the two of them really didn't know about this, Li Shimin felt even more assured. Zhang Feng's actions seemed to have been premeditated. Zhang Sun and Feng Xianling were not suitable to do this. For example, the last time when Malt entered the city, the clues were cut off, which meant that if they wanted to investigate, they would have to give up. Although Li Shimin was a little tempted by a little bit of gold, he still knew what was important and what was not. This person must have known his identity and everything that had happened between him and Zhang Feng. He did this because he wanted to use the things in the underground palace to threaten Li Shimin. If word got out, Li Shimin would lose all face. If he didn't spread it out, then their clues here would be cut off. This was really a plan to slap Li Shimin in the face. The more Li Shimin thought about it, the angrier he became. He slapped the table hard and said, Zhang Sun Wuji Feng Xianling, listen to me. Seeing that Li Shimin's expression changed, the two of them hurriedly bowed. Yes, Your Majesty. As per my orders, all of you, withdraw all the guards on the surface and move all the gold in the underground palace to the treasury within 2 hours. Completely block the entrance of the underground palace above the mansion, and send a group of local soldiers to guard it. In addition, send out the spies of the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Appointments to hide in Chang'an, and then steal the remaining gold in the underground palace. Spread the news in Chang'an. Hearing this, the two of them suddenly changed their expressions. Feng Xianling hurriedly said, Your Majesty, although this is a good plan, it will disgrace the royal family. Zhang Sun Wuji also hurriedly said, Your Majesty, I think we should take it slow. The underground passage leads out of the city. Zhang Feng has said that the clues of this matter will be cut off here. If you want to investigate it then. Li Shimin waved his hand and said impatiently, Just now Fengzi and I discussed a good plan. Isn't this underground palace worthless now? Then, I will use this gold to dig out more clues for him. In the secret passage of the underground palace, other than the Imperial Guards who participated today and all of you, who do you think could be easily found? Hearing this, the two of them. In an instant, a touch of surprise flashed across their eyes. There was really nothing that Zhang Feng didn't dare to do. He could even come up with such a bad plan. In this way, wouldn't the Emperor's face be completely disgraced? Moreover, how could the Emperor come up with such a bad plan? This was definitely a bad plan that only a lunatic like Zhang Feng could come up with. But on the other hand, this time Fengzi was really angry. Otherwise, he would never do this. Once the civil and military officials knew about this, his ending would be. At the thought of this, Feng Xianling hurriedly said again, Your Majesty, shouldn't we discuss this matter carefully? This will disgrace the royal family. Li Shimin waved his hand and said, I've made up my mind. Do it quickly. I'd like to see who dares to plot against me like this. How can the Tang dynasty be controlled by others? Chapter 1506. In Chang'an City, it was as lively as ever. Too many things had happened during this period of time. Therefore, many people were already numb to it. Especially after the emergence of Zhang Feng's magical phosphate fertilizer and the magical method of screening seeds. Previously, the people thought that the harvest would be better if they planted more seeds. However, they did not expect that only the most plump seeds would be used, and the seeds would be thinner than before. That way, there would still be some food left for them to eat. Although it seemed like a far-fetched idea, they had no choice but to believe the imperial edict now that it was out. If the emperor believed in it, how could they not believe it? In addition, there was already some progress on the phosphate fertilizer. At the foot of Longzhou Mountain outside Tunghua Gate. At this time, a large number of soldiers were digging up the mountain. It was said that they were preparing to build a phosphate fertilizer factory. Moreover, the emperor had even issued an imperial edict that the phosphate fertilizer planted this autumn would be free of charge. That was the key point. At this time, the people of Chang'an City did not even farm. They strolled around Chang'an City every day. They wanted to know when the factory would be built and when they would be able to receive the stuff. However, just as everyone was looking forward to that, a sudden piece of news made everyone's ears perk up. Have you heard? The third son of the Zhou family in Taiping Square, the guy who works in the palace, found more than a dozen gold ingots in the house that caught fire last night. What? A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Everyone was in an uproar. That was a big deal. More than a dozen gold ingots. That was equivalent to the lifetime income of an ordinary person. In an instant, the tea stall in front of the Vermilion Bird Gate was surrounded by curious people. Their eyes were red as they asked about the ins and outs of the matter. Is what you said true, old sir? That place is not far from here. When I came here just now, I saw groups of soldiers going in and out of that place. If there were gold ingots, they would have been taken away by the government. That's right, that's right. This thing can't be compared to other things. This ingot of gold can be exchanged for several carriages of copper coins. There are so many of them. Will the government allow people to bring them in privately? Liar. The old man chuckled and quietly took out an ingot of gold from his bosom. Look at what this is. Instantly, when everyone looked over, they saw a golden ingot the size of a fist in the old man's hand, flashing with golden light. They were all ordinary people. Although they hadn't seen much of the world, gold was extremely rare to them. But this gold, they all understood that. The moment he saw it, his eyes widened. The fist-sized piece of gold was engraved with things that looked like fish scales. It looked like a real fish scale. What was that? How could there be such a strange object? In an instant, everyone seemed to believe the old man's words. Someone couldn't help but ask, "Old sir, this thing, where did you really get it?" The old man slowly put the gold ingot into his bosom. He stroked his beard and said, "How can it be fake? And I should say something that I shouldn't say. The third son of the Zhou family is my son. He went there yesterday. This morning, President Zhang went there in person. I heard that Lord Zhang's son invited President Zhang Zhangfeng to have a look. I didn't expect that President Zhang would find an underground palace as soon as she went there." In an instant, the crowd was in an uproar. "Old sir, that underground palace. Old sir, tell us quickly, where is the underground palace? Is it filled with this thing? Old sir, don't keep us guessing. Tell us." In an instant, the crowd couldn't stay calm. In the crowd, there were a few people who had been carefully observing the old man, as if waiting for something. The old man drank the glutinous rice wine slowly and said, "Actually, my son didn't allow me to say this, but I was drunk today, so I said a few words. That place is basically sealed now, and the treasures there are almost all taken away by those people. However, the government seems to have rewarded Mr. Zhang Feng, but Mr. Zhang didn't seem to care. After taking some of it, he gave it to everyone present." What? The crowd was even more in an uproar. Who was Zhang Feng? He was a great philanthropist known by the whole Chang'an city. Things that others couldn't do were easily done by Zhang Feng, especially the way of giving gold ingots. Others might not be able to do it, but President Zhang dared to give phosphate fertilizer, salt, white paper, and other things. Even during the famine, he didn't hesitate to spend all his property to help the people of the whole Chang'an city. He really dared to do such a thing. Chapter 1507. For a moment, the common people no longer cared about the underground palace, the furnishings, and the warning that the underground palace was built in the style of the imperial palace. It was a rebellion. Who cared about that now? The ground was full of gold. Even the floor was made of gold. What did that mean? That meant that even if this place was emptied, there would still be gold. For a moment, people could not wait to run over there. Some people even spent a lot of money to buy good hose and other things. That was it. They ran away valiantly. Only a very small number of people continued to ask the old man. And the old man told them everything he knew without holding back. Until a young man came in a hurry. The old man grabbed him and pointed to the crowd. "Look, this is my third son. He is really an imperial guard. And he really saw Lord Zhang this morning." When the man heard that, his face darkened. He carried the old man and ran away in a hurry. However, this proved one thing even more. That was that this matter was definitely true. This time, how could everyone wait? They rushed in all directions. Some went to their families to report the news. Some went home to call their friends. For a moment, the entire Chang'an city was in chaos. Everyone was talking about this matter. It even shocked Niu Weili. When Niu Weili heard that, his eyes instantly darkened. The underground palace. The underground palace was found. And it was in his jurisdiction. How could this be? This was a king crime of rebellion. For a moment, Niu Weili was so angry that he hurriedly shouted, "Come on! Gather all the people in the government and go to the city." After the fire last night, he had already sent people there. After that, the imperial guards took over the matter in person. After that, there was no news. How could this be? In an instant, more than 100 people in the government, plus the assistant and so on, a group of people rushed to the city with sticks in their hands. At the same time, in the alleys and stalls in the entire Chang'an city, there were some people dressed up to inquire about this matter, hooking up with some people who were in a hurry. Then he entered an empty alley. Then, a person walked out of the room. As for the other person, he didn't know where he went. Such things almost always happened in Chang'an City. Reporting. In front of a house in Chang'an City, a peddler knocked on the door of the owner's house. Then he quietly slipped something into the crack of the door and ran away in a hurry. It was as if nothing had happened. However, in the next moment, he was invited to a corner. This house was also recorded in a small notebook. This kind of thing had already spread all over Chang'an City. Almost everyone who didn't go to the burning house had disappeared at this time. Chapter 1508. But, no matter who the three of them were, they couldn't do anything in front of Jingshu. Zhang Yuyao was still alright. After a few words of praise, she was gone. However, Jingshu was different. This girl had grown up in a place like Swallow Descent Brothel since she was young. Although she knew of Li Chengqian's identity, so at this moment, Li Chengqian was so anxious. So it was like this. After all, this matter was caused by Zhang Feng. If he didn't handle it well, then the imperial court would be in an uproar tomorrow. It was an imitation of the underground palace of the political announcement hall, and it happened right under the emperor's feet. For any emperor in the imperial court, this was too late to cover it up. But this Zhang Feng was good. He directly reversed it and was afraid that the world wouldn't know. What was this? This was simply unreasonable. After waiting for almost an hour, there was a sound coming from the door. Li Chengqian was instantly shocked and hurriedly shouted, "Fengzi. Fengzi, are you awake? What's the matter?" Zhang Feng lazily opened the door. He was stunned when he saw the scene outside the door. "What are you doing?" Zhang Feng looked at the scene outside the door in disbelief. Seeing this, Jingshu briefly explained the situation to Zhang Feng, and then walked into their room with Yuyao and Yuyao. Then Li Chengqian didn't care about anything else. He grabbed Zhang Feng and entered Zhang Feng's bedroom. Once he entered the door, he threw the things in his hands to Zhang Feng. "Fengzi, take a look at these things first." Zhang Feng looked at the things in his arms and then at Shiva, who was at the door. He scratched his head and said, "What's the matter? What's the matter? You still ask what's the matter? You turn Chang'an upside down. Now the entire Chang'an city is in an uproar. You're good. Are you hiding here to enjoy life? Sleeping soundly?" Zhang Feng was stunned. He hurriedly opened the book that looked like an account book in his bosom. As soon as he unfolded it, he saw that one of them was strong and the other was strong. The Hu family of Lilane. Today, a suspicious person entered the residence. Then, the family head of the residence said that he was sick and refused to come out. Someone saw the family head sneaking out of the residence from the back door. The shopkeeper of Eternal Peace Lane in West City hurried to the pawn shop in Sublime Justice Lane 2 hours ago. Zhang Feng looked at these densely packed things and couldn't help but be even more confused. "I say, Li Gan, what are you doing with this thing?" Li Chengqian pointed to the object in Dugo's bosom. Dugo handed the object over to Zhang Feng and said, "What happened in the underground palace today? Don't tell me you don't know? And today in your residence, did you ask an imperial guard to help you spread the news? When Zhang Feng heard this, he instantly understood. And then Li Chengqian was furious. He pointed at Zhang Feng for a long time before saying, "This is the result. This person's father took out a huge golden fruit on the street. Tell me, does this have anything to do with you?" When Zhang Feng heard this, he snorted. "I really don't know about this. This grandson actually dared to take something from somewhere without permission?" Li Chengqian saw that Zhang Feng didn't admit it and waved his hand angrily. "Forget it." His Majesty was furious about this matter and made Lord Zhang's son personally come to my residence to reprimand me. He even handed this matter over to my father. How would my father know how to handle this matter? Now only you can handle this matter. As he spoke, Li Chengqian sat down beside Zhang Feng and hugged his arms. "This matter was caused by you. Now His Majesty's face has been completely lost. Do you know your guilt? If you can't handle this matter today, tomorrow morning, you can just wait for us to go to jail." Li Chengqian really couldn't take it anymore. This matter affected the entire Chang'an city. At this time, everyone was struggling to find the gold. Some people even suspected that there was such a cellar in Chang'an city. Everyone narrowed their eyes and bent over to search in Chang'an city. As long as there was a small black hole, they would crawl into it to take a look. Now, everyone was in a state of panic. And those ministers had all gone to the palace to meet the emperor to impeach this matter. Zhang Feng simply stopped looking. This matter, he had planned for a long time. These situations were all foreseeable. And that gold was indeed given to the imperial guard by Du Ziting. He had already thought of countermeasures for these things. But at this time, seeing Li Chengqian like this, Zhang Feng was a little amused. This matter, in fact, is not a big deal. You just need to wait quietly for after tonight. Li Chengqian was stunned. You're still waiting for tonight? You really want to have your head chopped off, don't you? Zhang Feng lit a cigarette confidently and said with a smile. Actually, this matter will be revealed tomorrow morning. Don't be fooled by the fact that these people are jumping around happily at this time. These people are just small shrimps. Tell old Li, tell him to keep an eye on the place I mentioned. Tonight, the result will be revealed. What place? Li Chengqian asked immediately. But no matter what he said, Zhang Feng refused to say. He just told Li Chengqian that heaven's secret could not be revealed and sent him away. He was so angry that he wanted to bite Zhang Feng to death. However, there was nothing he could do about it. Everything was a mess now. Only Zhang Feng could solve this problem. After glaring at Zhang Feng, Li Chengqian hurriedly winked at Du Go and ran away. After Li Chengqian left, Du Go said with an unnatural expression, "Fengzi, is this true? Did you really do it?" Chapter 1509. Zhang Feng spread out his hands. Actually, there is still some truth to this matter. After all, I said at the beginning that if we want to fish, if we don't throw out the bait, how can these people take the bait? Then what is going on with these things happening now? Du Go spread out his hands. He really didn't know about this matter before. It was only just now that he knew about it from the conversation between the two. To Du Go, each and every one of these matters was an unprecedented feat. From today's incident in Zhang Shan's mansion to the fire in the residence in Jiaqing, Zhang Feng had actually caused so many things that had nothing to do with each other. Was there anything in this world that Zhang Feng couldn't do? These were all things that he needed to learn. In the beginning, Du Go really looked down on Zhang Feng. But as Zhang Feng's matters gradually increased, Du Go was completely captivated by Zhang Feng. It was because of Zhang Feng's cohesiveness, and the things that Zhang Feng did, which one of them couldn't be explained with common sense. These things at this time, such a big matter was happening, but Zhang Feng still had the mood to sleep here. If it was someone else, they would have been so anxious that their buttocks were on fire. How could they be as relaxed as Zhang Feng? This was the gap between them. At this time, seeing Zhang Feng say so, Du Go hurriedly asked, "Master, please enlighten me." At this time, Du Go completely put out the serious look of a student. Zhang Feng also didn't want to decline. He touched his nose and said, "Du Go, I'm very curious. Why did your father give you such a name?" Hearing this, Dugo even had the heart to die. This was a name that Li Chengqian randomly said. Who would have thought that it was actually? Seeing Zhang Feng ask this, Dugo could only gloomily lie. Actually, this matter is my father's fault. I heard that a few years ago, my father and the others made a bet with the second master after drinking. A few of them bet 1-on-1. Whoever lost would give their son a name. In the end, when Zhang Feng heard this, he was instantly stunned. So Dugo, Sun Chong, Chintiniu, that's how your names came about. Dugo nodded gloomily but added, Chongzi's name is actually Chong. Caterpillar, that worm. That was given by Uncle Yu. And my name was given by Uncle Chun. As for Tinia's name, it was given by my father. In an instant, Zhang Feng. He wanted to laugh, but seeing Dugo's gaze he could eat him, he could only suppress his laughter. This was really strange. He could even come up with such names. Cough cough, alright, let's not talk about this. Let's talk about this first. But Dugo, you've really lifted a big stone off my heart. I've always wondered if your names were fake names. Now it seems that there's no doubt about it. Ha 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 ha. Seeing Dugo's face slowly turn green, Zhang Feng hurriedly stopped talking and said, Well, let's talk about serious matters. Have you ever fished before? Dugo did not know why Zhang Feng suddenly asked such a question. He could only nod in surprise. Zhang Feng then said, Since you've fished before, you should know that before the big fish takes the bait, there will be many small fish that will constantly take the bait. Let's compare Chang'an city to a big fish pond. What's happening now? You can just see it as one small fish after another taking the bait. Dugo nodded in realization and said, But I still don't understand. This matter concerns the reputation of the royal family. If you do this, won't it mean that during tomorrow's morning court in the palace? And the big fish you mentioned, what would it be? Naturally, it would be those who built or are related to this underground palace. Today Lao Li, Old Fong, Old Sun and I went to take a look at that place. There's a secret door there. Not only can the secret door allow carriages to pass through, it also leads directly to the outside of the city. You're familiar with military books, so you naturally know what this means. Hearing this, Dugo nodded with a serious face. At this time, Zhang Feng continued, Once you understand this matter, then let me ask you, why did they burn down the mansion? Why did they create trouble outside Zhongshan's mansion? Why did they leave this underground palace after destroying all the evidence? Since these people left the underground palace, what's their purpose? Zhang Feng's consecutive questions directly caused Dugo to be stunned. Seeing that Dugo didn't speak, Zhang Feng waved his hand and called Shiva over. You're the crown prince of Zhenla. Tell me, if you're the enemy, what's your intention? How would Shiva know this? At this time, seeing Zhang Feng ask, he couldn't help but say, Could it be that they want to use the wealth in this underground palace to suppress the royal family? Impossible. Dugo waved his sleeve in shock. How can the royal family? Before he could finish his sentence, he found himself stuck in the middle of his sentence. If this wasn't the case, then what was the emperor's situation now? Wasn't he being tricked? Zhang Feng nodded and let Shiva continue. Shiva continued. Take this underground palace as an example. They completely imitated the construction style of the political announcement palace and used a large amount of gold. Actually, the meaning is very clear. Last night, they had an entire night to move the gold away, but they didn't. Instead, they left it here. There are two reasons. Zhang Feng nodded and clapped his hands in praise. You're right. What are the two reasons? Dugo was also enlightened at this time. He stared at Shiva with his eyes wide open. Shiva took a deep breath and said, First, they want to use this underground palace to threaten the current emperor to keep the peace. It can be considered as a warning because they might have predicted that you would personally take action and would definitely find this underground palace. Chapter 15:10. Zhang Feng looked at Shiva in surprise. This person was indeed a member of the royal family of Zhenla. Although Zhang Feng had been very careful not to hand over some important things to him, and this Shiva had always been Zhang Feng's page boy, and Zhang Feng had not paid much attention to him because he was busy. But now that he thought of Li Gan and the rest, and looked at Shiva, the difference was obvious. Perhaps this was the difference in their mental states? Shiva could guess most of Zhang Feng's guesses just from the few words between them. What was this? This was a prodigy. No, a monster. Shiva was 20 years old after all. Zhang Feng took a deep breath and said, "That's right. Shiva is right. The existence of this underground palace is a warning to us. Even if I find this place, I won't dare to do anything. This is only one of the reasons." Shiva continued. Shiva heard this and bowed, saying, "There is another reason. This person wants to test you. If you can't find the location of this underground palace, then they will probably have a big move behind. They are waiting for the dean." What? Dugo heard this and his expression changed. The location of the underground palace is at Yongjia Lane, which is at the foot of the city wall of Tonghua Gate. This place is remote and sparsely populated, so it is very suitable for some shady business. The secret door of this underground palace leads directly to the outside of the city. If these people want to rebel, they only need to enter the city through this secret door and quietly control the guards of Tonghua Gate. After entering the city, they can go straight to the imperial city. Dugo's expression changed greatly when he thought of this. Shiva's expression gradually turned solemn. At first, he only understood half of it, but after he repeated it once more, he was able to understand all the parts that he didn't understand previously. These people's goal was not simple. After Shiva finished speaking, he quickly bowed and said, "Redeem this student's incompetence. There are even more profound parts. I hope you can enlighten me." Zhang Feng smacked his lips and said, "De Bing, did you see that? As for the few of you, Sai, forget it. You're on your own now." While Dugo was feeling ashamed, Zhang Feng stood up and patted Dugo's shoulder. "You're right. Even if Lao Tzu didn't misjudge you back then, from the moment you entered the tavern, I already said that you would definitely become a capable person in the future. Now it seems, TSK, your achievements are limitless." When Shiva heard this, he immediately lowered his body even more. "This is all thanks to Master's teachings." Zhang Feng chuckled as he helped Shiva up and said, "It's already beyond my expectations that you can think of so many things. Your guess is exactly the same as mine." "That's right. There is indeed something more profound in this. That is foreshadowing." When this person left behind this underground palace, he actually had two plans. If we didn't discover it, then their backup plan would definitely have dealt us a heavy blow. But even if we did discover it, they would at most lose some gold. Because this underground palace's secret door leads to the Longsho Canal outside the city. Once we go through the secret door, there will be no more clues. This is their backup plan to cut off all clues, using the underground palace as a threat and warning us that we can't find anything. Lao Tzu really admires this person's wisdom. Zhang Feng clasped his hands behind his back and looked at the school building outside the window. A haze flashed across his eyes. In fact, Zhang Feng had already thought of these things. However, he thought that with his wisdom, he could do whatever he wanted in the Tang dynasty. But today's matter really gave Zhang Feng a hard slap in the face. There were still capable people in the Tang dynasty. At the very least, in terms of manipulating people's hearts, Zhang Feng had already experienced it. Mother****, this person was definitely a monster. He even thought of such a vicious method. And the biggest thing that made Zhang Feng feel suffocated was this kind of operation. He had already thought of so many things. The most important thing was that Zhang Feng really wanted to know this person. This time, even if it was a head-on competition, if Zhang Feng lost, then, therefore, at this time, Zhang Feng was attracted by a mysterious person for the first time. It ignited his competitive spirit. Who could this person be? However, at this time, Dugo and Shiva didn't think so at all. Zhang Feng at this time gave people a feeling that he was like an unsheathed sword. Mother****, it was completely different from before. What Zhang Feng said just now, coupled with the changes in Chang'an city at this time, made the two of them feel a sense of crisis in an instant. This matter, if it was not handled properly, it would not be as simple as a failure. This was simply putting one's head on one's belt. Once it failed, then, what awaited Zhang Feng would naturally be the anger of all the civil and military officials in the imperial court tomorrow, and more importantly, the identity of the emperor might be exposed. This was also a difficult problem that the other party gave Zhang Feng, but only Zhang Feng didn't know this problem at this time. If Zhang Feng knew the real identity of the emperor, what kind of ending would it be? The most important thing was, Zhang Feng actually treated Chang'an city as a battlefield. This game, no matter who won or lost, seemed to be a disaster for Chang'an city. After all, it was gold. This was the greed of everyone. Although there were many secret passages, for the people who were familiar with Chang'an city, it didn't seem that difficult to find him, right? Chapter 1511. At the same time, Yongjiao Lane at the entrance of Tunghua in Chang'an city was already crowded with people. Almost everyone had only one goal. It was a ruin that was still steaming hot. At this time, the ruin had been surrounded by people from the Chang'an local government. Niu Weili put his hands on his hips, panting and shouting on a dark piece of wood, "Go back to Lao Tzu, all of you." In an instant, all the people were frightened. Who was Niu Weili? He was the king of hell in Chang'an city. Although there were higher officials in Chang'an, and then Niu Weili, it was the Chang'an local government that had direct contact with the interests of the people. Therefore, Niu Weili's words at this time still had some deterrence. Niu Weili saw the crowd gradually stop clamoring. Only then did he wipe the cold sweat on his forehead. Looking at the place that had been turned upside down as if it had been trampled by pigs, he felt weak all over. The small wooden house behind him was gone. More than a dozen soldiers had already run away when he arrived. He didn't know whether they went to get reinforcements or something else. In short, they were gone. However, the small house here had already been demolished. Seeing that the entrance to the underground was about to be pried open, how could he sit still? Where was this? This was Chang'an city. And most importantly, the things here were made according to the appearance of the political announcement hall in the palace. Although he hadn't seen it before, he didn't dare to go in even if he was given 10,000 guts. But after all, this belonged to the royal family. How could these people be qualified to tarnish this place? But at this time, when he saw the situation here and looked at the tide of people, Niu Weili also felt a little scared. At this time, the people of the local government trembled all over. It seemed that something terrible was brewing here. The main thing was, these government servants and constables, when had they ever seen such a scene? So many people. They also felt a chill in the bottom of their hearts. Master Niu, this place doesn't belong to the government, right? We didn't make any trouble. Second, we didn't smash or burn. We just want to have a look and help clean up this place. What are you doing? Yes. We didn't make any trouble. We just came here to have a look. Can't we even have a look? This is unreasonable. How can they do such a thing? Some people in the crowd were unhappy and began to complain. The key was that these people were all reputable figures. Even if Niu Weili saw them now, he had to treat them seriously. Niu Weili cupped his fists and said to the two people who had spoken before, "The situation here is really quite complicated. It's hard to explain in a few sentences, so he had no choice but to say, the two of you, to be honest, this underground palace was built by the rebels. There are many things that are related to the secrets of the royal family. With your status, you should know the weight of these things. Do you think that this place is a place where outsiders can enter? Furthermore, this matter has already alerted His Majesty. When you arrived, you saw those soldiers running away. What are they doing?" He was going to call for reinforcements. Once the people from the Chang'an military camp come, even I can't guarantee what will happen. In an instant, everyone's expression suddenly changed. This place. They only knew that there was an earth palace and there was gold. But they didn't know what it was. Most of them just came here to have a look. The news could be spread out, and it could flow out from under the crotch of those soldiers. Would there be a grain of gold sand? But one should know that those soldiers' eyes were very bright. The gold in this place, at this moment. Niu Weili continued to say loudly. The laws of the Tang dynasty clearly state that if people without permission or covet the royal family, they will be banished to the bitter cold land at the border. You have to think carefully about this matter. In an instant, the people were in an uproar. Among them, those who wanted to have a look had other thoughts in their minds. Some wanted to retreat, But more people wanted to know what was going on. The most terrifying thing was when the crazy people went crazy. At this moment, although most of the people had dispersed, there was still a group of people who were loitering around, unwilling to leave. Niu Weili looked at these people and felt a headache coming on. They didn't even break the law. How could they arrest them? If they didn't arrest them, what kind of place was this? How could they be allowed to do whatever they wanted? If the underground palace were to be dug out, then his head would be cut off. At the thought of this, Niu Jinda's head hurt even more. At this moment, a yamen runner touched his head with a strange expression and walked over slowly. As he walked, he looked back at something. He almost bumped into Niu Weili. The yamen runner said hurriedly, "Sir, this is something that someone gave me just now. He asked me to give it to you." Niu Weili heard this and immediately looked at the yamen runner's hand. There was indeed a ball of white paper. Niu Weili's eyes narrowed. How many people could use a piece of white paper? And most importantly, they could send him private messages. At the thought of this, Niu Weili hurriedly asked, "Where is that person?" The yamen runner looked behind him and said, "I didn't see him." Chapter 15:12. When Niu Weili heard this, he waved his hand and asked the yamen to block him. He slowly unfolded the piece of paper. The piece of paper was not big and seemed to have been torn off. It was only 2 fingers wide, and there were 2 words written on it with charcoal. "Leave, leave? What does that mean?" Niu Weili was a little confused. Who on earth is this? But come to think of it, there are only a few people. It's impossible for it to be Blossom. I heard that he came out of the mansion and went straight back to the mountain. Then this? Could it be someone from the palace? At the thought of this, Niu Weili's expression changed greatly. Is there something else going on here? For example, is this intentional? At the thought of this, Niu Weili instantly connected everything that had happened in the city that day in detail. He really had some idea of what was going on. That is to say, what happened here might really have been done by someone on purpose. This underground palace is such a big thing. In the palace, there are so many spies from the Ministry of Personnel, Ministry of Justice, Supreme Court, and so on. How could they not know that there is such a big place here? If they don't know, it can only be said that this person's identity is no longer something that Niu Weili can touch. This is a tricky thing. Looking at those people who had been wandering around, Niu Weili couldn't help but feel a chill when he thought of it. Could it be that among these people, he thought of an extremely horrible thing, that is, these people seemed to be spies. At this moment, he finally figured out why someone would give him the note. It was obviously because someone wanted to give face to Zhang Feng, or his appearance had affected someone's plan. Cold sweat. In an instant, sweat oozed out of Niu Weili's forehead with a swish. It was said that in Chang'an city, even if one spat, one could hit a person that one could not afford to offend. Ever since he had some business with Zhang Feng, he had become more and more arrogant. Niu Weili's courage was a little high. Basically, he didn't think too much about some things. After all, Zhang Feng had a powerful backer behind him. However, today's note instantly made Niu Weili see the gap between them. Although Zhang Feng was only a 5th-rank official in name at this time, and although he said that he was the Chancellor and Viscount, Niu Weili thought that this title was just a casual remark made by the Emperor. But now it seemed that, it was his own wishful thinking. That was a real identity. What was he? He was just a small county magistrate of Chang'an City. Putting everything else aside, any one of Zhang Feng's identities could easily kill him, and he wouldn't even need to pay with his life. At this moment, Niu Weili panicked. However, he didn't dare to show it. He didn't know that since this person dared to give him a note like this, it meant that this person wanted to use this method to warn him not to get involved. He tried to slip away. I really want to. He narrowed his eyes slightly, thinking hard about the reason to leave. However, after looking around, he couldn't find a reasonable explanation. However, at this moment he suddenly found that not far away, an old man was sitting on a piece of rotten wood not far away. He seemed to be resting his feet, but also seemed to be digging for something. In an instant, Niu Weili's eyes lit up. He hurriedly shouted angrily, "How dare you, old man? Lao Tzu has said that no one is allowed to touch a blade of grass or a tree here. How dare you steal under my nose? Guards. Everyone was scared silly by Niu Weili's sudden outburst. What was going on? What was he doing? Was he crazy, or did something really big happen? The old man was scared out of his wits. He trembled in fear and held up a broken straw shoe high, shouting that he was wronged. But what was this? This was a chance for Niu Weili to escape. How could he give up? He waved his hand and shouted angrily again, "Guards! Here!" All the yamen runners didn't know what was going on. However, seeing Niu Weili so angry at this moment, they thought that this old man had really done something outrageous. They hurriedly surrounded him. The old man was so scared that his whole body was shaking. He shouted that he was wronged. However, Niu Weili wouldn't listen. His nonsense? He waved his hand and said, "Quickly arrest this thief and bring him back to the yamen. I want to investigate thoroughly." All the yamen runners were dumbfounded. At this moment they couldn't stand it anymore. Wasn't he just sitting there and getting a shoehorn? What was wrong with him? Did he drink the wrong medicine? However, he only dared to criticize in his heart. Nevertheless, he still ran over eagerly. More than 100 burly bailiffs surrounding an old man who had lost all his teeth. This scene was simply too beautiful. Niu Weili rolled up the sleeves of his official uniform and waved his hand. "Guards, escort him back to the yamen." All the yamen runners were dumbfounded. He came in a hurry with an imposing manner. Now he was in a hurry to go back. What was he going to do? The private advisor's mouth was wide open, and the folding fan in his hand was about to fall to the ground. He was stunned by Niu Weili's magnificent feat, and was directly petrified. What the F***ck is going on here? Just as the private advisor was in a daze, Niu Weili had already gotten into the sedan chair. However, when he saw this, he was also anxious. He hurriedly lifted his robe and hurriedly pulled the private advisor, saying, "If not now, when should we go?" Chapter 15-13. After Niu Weili left, everyone was stunned for a moment, and then they all flocked to the house that had been turned over like a mountain or river. At this time, no one could tell that this was a house. Appearance? The people were crazy, especially after people exclaimed one after another, picking up a piece of glittering gold ingot or a jar of copper coins from the ground. Then the enthusiasm here was finally completely ignited. Everyone, as if on steroids, began to crazily turn over the ground with their buttocks sticking out. What they didn't notice was that these people who dug up good things were directly piling up a big hill where the small house was located without leaving a trace. At the same time, in the imperial palace, Li Shimin, Wei Zhang, and the others stopped all the things in their hands. In the imperial study, the little eunuchs directly lined up like butterflies and directly sent pieces of paper into the imperial study. The table of Li Shimin, Wei Zhang, and the others had already been piled up with piles of paper. Looking at the piles of notes, Lin Yiqian thought. Li Shimin's head was about to explode. In just more than 2 hours, a total of more than a few hundred people were found to be involved in this matter in Chang'an. Among them, dozens of people were found to have committed suicide. There were also more than 50 people who had fled. There were even some who had directly clashed with the spies for the sake of this matter, resulting in countless casualties. At this time, there were already dozens of officials kneeling outside the imperial study, waiting for an audience. But Li Shimin only had one answer. That was to kneel. Among the hundreds of people, at least half of the officials involved had been involved, and the other half occupied almost all the industries in Chang'an City. Li Shimin really didn't know before he checked, but now that he checked, Li Shimin had the impulse to ride on the warhorse and directly kill these people directly. This was simply a slap in his face. At this time, without waiting for the eunuch to report, Li Chengqian hurriedly barged into the imperial study. Without waiting for Li Shimin to speak, Li Chengqian hurriedly said, "Imperial father, this son has an important matter to report." Li Shimin's eyes lit up when he heard this. He hurriedly waved his sleeves and said, "Tell me." Wei Zhang and the others also abruptly stopped what they were doing and looked at Li Chengqian. At this moment Li Chengqian said, "The answer Feng Zi gave me just now was to bide our time." "What?" Li Shimin heard this. He instantly frowned. Although this matter didn't seem like much, after thinking about it carefully, it really couldn't wait any longer. I reckon that before tomorrow's morning court, basically all the civil and military officials of Hassan will come here to kneel. Right? At this time, Li Shimin was already taking a huge risk to forcefully investigate the case. If this were to continue, if it was possible, Li Shimin would not have sent someone to the mountain to ask Zhang Feng. This matter was simply too big. Li Shimin hadn't thought of this before, but after investigating, he instantly understood why Zhang Feng was so hesitant to say this matter at that time. This matter had already damaged the reputation of the royal family. If this spread out, it would be like slapping Li Shimin's face. However, if he didn't investigate, all the clues would be cut off. This was extremely passive for Li Shimin. What if this was really a test like Zhang Feng said? And what if this underground palace wasn't discovered? If it was really as Zhang Feng said, there would be a big gift for him? Then this big gift. The more Li Shimin thought about it, the angrier he became. He waved his hand and said, "Continue." As he spoke, Li Shimin's entire body trembled as he lit a cigarette. However, the smoke had already been blackened by the wick of the oil lamp. But at this moment, how could Li Shimin care so much? He suppressed his trembling hand and calmed himself down. The more he investigated this matter, the more he felt how terrible it was. This Tunghua Gate had been directly taken over without anyone noticing? What about the gate of the imperial city? What about the other city gates? In an instant, Li Shimin didn't have a trace of security. At this time, Li Chengqian continued. Fengzi described Chang'an city as a fishing ground. He meant that this was the first head-on confrontation with that person, and this Chang'an city was a chessboard. Now those who were fished out and investigated were all small shrimps. The real big fish had been watching from behind, and these small shrimps were those who were sent out by those people to test. Hearing this, Wei Zheng instantly exclaimed, "Your Highness, did Fengzi really say this himself?" Li Chengqian nodded with a solemn expression. At that time, Du Go was also there. He can testify. This time, Wei Zheng's expression suddenly changed. He also felt more and more terrified of this matter. This was the first head-on confrontation. What about Ba Shui's rescue in Chang'an City? What about all the previous incidents? Was everything at that time just a test? This time, was it really a game? But this was Chang'an City, where the face of the Tang dynasty was located. At this time, using Chang'an City as the battlefield was already a big taboo. What on earth did this person want to do? Feng Xianling, Du Ruhui, and others also looked serious at this time. Fishing, they had all fallen into it before, so they naturally knew some of the tricks involved. But at this time, Fengzi actually described the whole turmoil in Chang'an as a fishing ground. The bait must be the underground palace, which was the face of the imperial family. This bait was really a bit too big. It was so big that no one dared to talk nonsense at this time. But they didn't know what to do at this time. They couldn't help but look at Zhang Feng and ask in unison, "Your Highness Fengzi, do you have anything else to say?" Chapter 15-14. Li Shimin couldn't suppress the anger in his heart. He was about to speak. But after hearing the words of Feng Xianling and Du Ruhui, Li Shimin suppressed the anger in his heart and looked at Li Chengqian. Li Chengqian saw this and hurriedly said, "Fengzi also said that we only need to wait until tomorrow morning. Before the morning court, there will be a big fish taking the bait." What? Li Shimin got up in surprise and stared at Li Chengqian. "Qian, or what does Fengzi mean?" At this time, these people had set up such a big plan. Even if all the spies of the 3 departments were sent out, they could only find some clues and no useful clues. How could he allow these people to expose themselves tonight? This was simply impossible. Or else, why did they have to make such a big scene? Why don't they just send their troops over? Could it be, tonight, they were going to make a big move? Li Shimin thought of this and instantly changed his expression. If this was true, then, pass the imperial edict, Qi Gong and Qin Qiong, quickly lead troops to station at all gates of Chang'an City and prepare for war. Order Qing Yaojin to quickly send out elites to patrol around Chang'an and city and strictly investigate the people in and out, as well as the rivers and secret passages connected to Chang'an and city. Li Shimin's sudden imperial edict made Wei Zheng and others turn pale with fright. He hurriedly said, "Your Majesty, we can't be too hasty at this time. If we issue an imperial edict now, I'm afraid there will be a rebellion." "Your Majesty, I also think that we can't do it now." "I second that." The three hurriedly got up. Li Chengqian also hurriedly persuaded, "Father, please calm down. I also asked Fengzi about this matter. Fengzi means that we only need to guard the underground palace." In an instant, Feng Xianling thought of the exit of the underground palace. Could it be that Fengzi wanted to use this bait and the chaos caused by the chaos in Chang'an and city to make this person unable to sit still, and then send people in to investigate? But at this moment, as long as that person wasn't an idiot, who would do that? This was clearly a trap. Could it be that there was someone who was this stupid? "Your Highness, this is a little ridiculous. It's not that I don't trust Fengzi, but this is a matter of great importance. If there's even the slightest mistake, it will destroy the imperial court." Wei Zheng hurriedly bowed to Li Shimin and continued, "Moreover, I feel that Fengzi's consideration of this matter is somewhat inappropriate. He has always thought that we are all ordinary businessmen, so he basically schemes over these political matters. Moreover, these matters are too important. I can't trust him." Not to mention Wei Zheng. Li Shimin himself couldn't figure out what Zhang Feng was thinking. If this matter was so simple, then how could it be so troublesome? They would have found the culprit long ago. And from this matter, this person's wisdom could be said to be unparalleled in the world. He also knew Li Shimin's identity and everything that had happened between him and Zhang Feng. Although every time they went out of the palace, they hid their identities and even asked the palace maids to personally put on makeup and put on beards for them. In this way, even if they walked in the palace, it was extremely difficult for people to discover their true identities. But this matter was still known by outsiders. And now it became the most important thing for others to use against them. At this moment, Li Shimin thought about it and felt a little regretful. If only he had directly revealed his identity earlier, perhaps it would have been much better. But now was not the time to talk about this. Li Shimin knew the consequences of this matter, but at that time, because he was angry, he wanted to catch them all in one net. However, what he didn't expect was that the people involved in this matter were really unprecedented. Basically, half of the officials in the imperial court were involved. What did this mean? Even before the incident at Xuanwu Gate, this was not to be outdone. At this time, Li Shimin felt a deep and heavy pressure, as well as waves of suffocation. Everyone's faces that he trusted, flashed through his mind like a revolving lantern. But he still couldn't find a useful one, or rather a suspicious one. But suddenly, a person's shadow inexplicably leaped out. "Qin," Li Chengqian hurriedly said. "Your son is here." "Where is Duke of Chun?" Wei Zheng and the others instantly frowned. Could it be? The emperor was suspecting. Li Chengqian began to panic. He hurriedly said, replying to Imperial Father, "Early yesterday morning, Duke of Chun left Chang'an and city for Luozhou." Luo. Li Shimin narrowed his eyes. Duke of Chun has been in the Eastern Palace this entire time. Did anything strange happen? Li Chengqian had also sensed that something was wrong, and he hastily gave a detailed report of Hou Junji's movements. He wanted to find out what the crown prince had been studying, and what he was up to. This was all very normal. After all, this was the crown prince's father-in-law, so there was nothing wrong with asking. But, with this answer, there didn't seem to be anything strange. Li Shimin couldn't help but be even more confused. Why did Zhang Feng say that it was Hou Junji? Could it be Zhang Feng had suspected him from the start? Chapter 15:15. The first impression that Hou Junji gave off was that he was kind and amiable. He had also met Zhang Feng a few times. The first time was at Zhang Feng's residence, where he had personally witnessed Zhang Feng's mystical leg-linking technique. Then, during the opening ceremony, he had gone up the mountain to see Zhang Feng's White Deer College. And early on, during the famine in Chang'an, And Ho Junji had taken out 10,000 dan of grain to support Zhang Feng. After that, Li Shimon's memories seemed to have nothing to do with him. Why would Zhang Feng bring up this person? Whether it was Li Shimon, Wei Zheng, or the others, they were all baffled. Ever since the Xuanwu Gate incident, Ho Junji, this meritorious subject, had bravely retreated at the top of the tide. He basically did not participate in the politics of the imperial court, leaving behind only an empty title and a salary. Such a kind and low-key person. It was hard for them to connect him to the person behind this matter, who was so meticulous in planning Weibo. This was simply impossible, absolutely impossible. Li Shimon took in a deep breath and slumped against the soft couch of the dragon throne. Rubbing his forehead, he asked, "Is there any mystery behind that secret passage? Also, Fengzi, what other plans do you have? Tell us in full." "As your majesty commands." Li Chengqian hurriedly told Wang Chong all of Zhang Feng's plans. For a moment, the entire imperial study fell silent, but at this moment, it was so quiet that it was somewhat frightening. The human heart. Yet another contest of the human heart. At this moment, Li Shimon and the others finally understood why Zhang Feng had said that this was a battlefield. At this time, Chang'an City was more like a fish pond, and Zhang Feng and that person were like two fishermen, playing a game of chess in this pond. Li Shimon felt a wave of helplessness just thinking about it. How resourceful must one be to be able to play such a high-level game? Although Li Shimon was very envious, it was already too late for him to learn this. However, Li Shimon had already secretly made up his mind. From now on, he would be busy every day to learn the art of manipulating people's hearts. What was the difference between this and the emperor technique that Master Yuan had mentioned? There was no difference at all. Li Shimon waved his hand and said, "I'm a little tired of this matter. Let's just do as Zhang Feng said. I'll believe Fengzi this once. Perhaps Zhang Feng is right." Hearing this, Wei Zheng hurriedly got up and said, "Your Majesty, you must not do this. No matter whether you win or lose in the game, this is tantamount to hurting the face of our Tang dynasty. This matter." Li Shimon got up dejectedly, waved his hand and said with a wry smile, "At the beginning, Fengzi didn't mention this matter. I asked Fengzi 3 times before Fengzi told me. The underground palace is indeed a backup plan left by someone. If it's not Fengzi, I think tonight's Chang'an City seems to be more chaotic than it is now. And this clue also stopped here. Who gave me and Fengzi this difficult question? Do you want to slap your own face, or do you want to let them go?" But Wei Zheng hurriedly wanted to speak again, but he was stopped by Li Shimon with a wave of his hand. He said, "I know what you want to say, but think about it. This person dared to build an underground palace in that place. What does this mean? This means that this person already knows my temperament very well. If I'm still the same as before, then I'll lose this time. In the future, I'll never be able to sleep well. The gold in the underground palace was left to me by him, or it was given to Fengzi by Lu. This is a multiple-choice question he left me. If I really choose to lose face, I'm bound to lose more. You're all right. This is a test and also a game. If I don't even have the courage to play the game, then this underground palace will be my grave. So since Fengzi wants to play the game, so what if I lose face? At least, I won't let down the people of the Tang dynasty. So even if my reputation is ruined in the end, so what?" Li Shimon's words. It was deeply shocking in Wei Zheng's mind. It was indeed as the emperor said. This palace was completely built according to the model of the political announcement hall. That was to say, this person knew the affairs of the imperial court very well. To say the least, this person had a deep understanding of the ministers and the emperor's temperament. He must also know that once this was known, even if the emperor intended to do this, he would definitely stand up to stop him. At the thought of this, Wei Zheng's face suddenly changed. Just who was this person? Could it really be Ho Junji? Or perhaps King Li? At this thought, Wei Zheng was constantly sifting through these suspicious people in his mind, but the more he sifted through them, the more horrified he felt. Unexpectedly, anyone who was suspicious was no longer suspicious at this moment. Li Shimon scanned the crowd, pausing on each person's face for a moment. When he was done looking at the last person, his eyes suddenly paused on little Gizi. Little Gizi also sensed Li Shimon's gaze, paled, and hastily got down on his knees. Your Majesty, this servant. Get up. We didn't say anything about you. Li Shimon sighed and waved his hand. The decree from before remains unchanged. Everything will continue as before. I fear that something unexpected might happen. Qian, quickly return to the mountain, and take a group of golden guards with you. We want to know the important information from Fengzi as soon as possible. No matter how late it is, anyone with the Crown Prince's token will be allowed to enter the Imperial Palace tonight. Your son obeys the decree. Chapter 15-16. It was night. The sky was like a piece of black silk, clear and deep. If one stared at it for a long time, there would be a kind of fear and loneliness, as if being swallowed by the darkness. Zhang Feng was lying on the balcony on the second floor. The recliner under him creaked. Other than that, there was no sound on the mountain. In the past, this time on the mountain was the busiest time after the students left school. In addition, the villa area and the student dormitory were basically close to each other. Once something happened, it would spread throughout the dormitory area. But tonight, everything seemed so quiet and strange. It seemed that everyone knew that something big would happen tonight. They had shut their mouths early, including the sound of insects on the mountain. It was so quiet. It was rare for Zhang Feng to calm down. He recalled everything from the Qian Wanli incident to now. He even kept thinking about the figure he saw by chance when he was in Lantian. It was as if there was a pair of eyes staring at him from every angle. At this time, Zhang Feng even had a feeling that a colorful tiger was staring at him with a pair of bloodthirsty eyes in the dark, ready to give him a fatal blow at any time. This feeling was very unpleasant. But in the chaos earlier, Zhang Feng did not think of this. Now that things had quieted down, Zhang Feng began to reorganize the events of the day. From the incident at Zhang Shan's house to Zhang Fuxing's arrival, everything seemed to have happened naturally, but there seemed to be a deeper meaning behind it. That was a test. Why did these things happen here today? And he must have known that if something happened to Zhang Shan's family, he would definitely go down the mountain. But even so, this person still did this. Was it a diversion? Or was it luring the snake out of its hole? Zhang Feng did not understand what this person was thinking. However, Zhang Feng already understood very well. This time, there was someone who really wanted to talk to him. And the way to speak was through the underground palace, and the things left behind in the underground palace. Of course, what Laoli said today about the people who were found in Chang'an city by the spies of the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Appointments must have something to do with this. However, Zhang Feng's intuition told him that this person was willing to take such a huge risk and expose his original team. What was his purpose? Zhang Feng looked at the distant Chang'an city in confusion. Zhang Feng could not help narrowing his eyes slightly. What had happened in Chang'an city that day flashed through Zhang Feng's mind. Zhang Feng's residence was in the East City. Although it was not far from Tunghuimen in a straight line, it was still at least a mile away. Once something happened here, even if there was a huge commotion on the other side, no one would notice. Then what was the purpose of this person's plan? Could it be that he really only wanted him to leave his head and tail alone? Previously, Zhang Feng did not seriously think about what happened today. Now that he thought about it, Zhang Feng suddenly thought of a possibility. That was, at that time, the people in the underground palace had not left yet. They were waiting. If he did not go there, it was very likely that they would not leave either. That was to say, these people also left in a hurry? Then Zhang Feng's eyes could not help but flicker. Previously, when Zhang Feng told Laoli that there might be people going to the underground palace tonight, it was only because of Zhang Feng's control of people's minds. He was sure that these people would definitely be greedy. But now that he thought about it, Zhang Feng was even more certain that there would be a big fish taking the bait. As for what kind of big fish it would be, Zhang Feng did not know for the time being, and did not want to know. Because he knew one thing, that was the more he knew, the faster he would die. Thinking of this, Zhang Feng got up and shouted downstairs, "Old Ma! Ma Xinliang, who had been waiting outside the courtyard of Zhang Feng's villa, immediately came out of the shadows and looked at Zhang Feng and saluted. Courtyard. Come up. Hearing this, Ma Xinliang was a little hesitant. After all, the two deans' wives were on the second floor. If he went up now, Ma Xinliang was also a ruthless person. Since the incident with Qian Wanli last time, his reputation had been praised in the academy. He had also heard about the incident at the foot of the mountain today, and naturally knew that it was the doing of the dean. Gritting his teeth, Ma Xinliang stabbed the mo sword in his hand into the ground, climbed up the window, and climbed to the balcony of the second floor in a few steps. As soon as he went upstairs, Zhang Feng patted Ma Xinliang, who was squatting beside him, on the shoulder and said, Old Ma, go look for Du Dabing immediately. It would be best if you can finally gone. Then spread the news. While speaking, Zhang Feng whispered a few words in Ma Xinliang's ear. Ma Xinliang's face changed instantly when he heard this. This. Dean, do we need to? Zhang Feng waved his hand and gestured for him to keep quiet. This matter can't be made public. Just tell them as I said, and they will know what to do. Hearing this, Ma Xinliang gritted his teeth and hurriedly jumped down from the balcony of the second floor. At this time, he had forgotten that he was on the second floor. He only knew that tonight in Chang'an City, a person of high status was destined to fall. Chapter 15-17. Fengzi. Not long after Ma Xinliang left, the old scholar hurried over with a lantern in his hand. Hearing this, Zhang Feng hurriedly asked Gao Qin to open the door, and then hurried downstairs. In the living room, the old scholar looked gravely at Zhang Feng, who had just come downstairs, and asked, I just saw Ma Xinliang go over. Did you find out something big again? Zhang Feng nodded, and went through the events of the day in detail. Hearing this, the old scholar stroked his beard and nodded. I know the general situation of this matter, but I always feel that this person is somewhat familiar. You'd better take it easy and don't go too far. Otherwise, you'll be driven to desperation. Also, after today, you're not allowed to go down the mountain. Zhang Feng couldn't help but be stunned. What's the matter? The old scholar said with a serious expression. Do you still want your academy? Let's not talk about anything else. Look at the academy. Although it's running, everyone's thinking is basically wondering what the dean did today to shock the world. Or wondering what you are doing. Think about it. What will happen if this goes on? Let's not talk about other things first. Now, just based on what old man found out, some students are privately betting on whether you'll go on a killing spree because of what happened today. The old scholar looked at Zhang Feng earnestly and said, I know and understand what happened to Qian Wanli, but that place is not something we can get involved in. Our focus is on the academy. Think about it. If one day you touch the emperor's reverse scale, do you think the emperor will let you go? Let's not talk about this first. Even if the emperor won't do that, what if it's someone else? That mysterious person is driven to desperation by you, and he'll give you. Have you thought about us? Have you thought about the students of the academy? To be honest, have you thought about your 3 women? Have you thought about it? You're having fun, but they're scared and on edge. Zhang Feng's expression changed when he heard this. He solemnly nodded his head and said, Old scholar, I understand. Once this matter is over, I will devote all my attention to my research. But as you can see, it was someone else who was playing tricks on me. I just wanted to protect the people I wanted to protect. The old scholar waved his hand to interrupt Zhang Feng. In fact, he also understood that all of this was due to external factors. Zhang Feng was only passively receiving the attack. But this time, using the whole Chang'an city as the gambling point, the danger was obvious. If he failed, it would be fatal for Zhang Feng. Putting aside the others, just the officials themselves would not let Zhang Feng off so easily. The entire academy, as well as the reputation that Zhang Feng had built up, would collapse in an instant. As for Zhang Feng's family, what will happen? These old guys said that it was okay. At worst, they could go back and write letters to others. But what about his 3 women? Especially Yu and Jingshu. The old scholar was experienced. Of course, he knew that the 2 women had consummated their marriage with Zhang Feng. That meant they had sex. At this time, the old scholar didn't want to come at first. After discussing this matter with Yu Shinan and others, he met Ma Xinliang on the way back. After asking, he knew that Zhang Feng was going to make trouble again. So he hurried to find Zhang Feng. He wanted to tell Zhang Feng everything clearly, so that Zhang Feng wouldn't do something out of line in the end. If that happened, it would be too late for regrets. But in the face of these questions, Zhang Feng also suddenly woke up from his stupor. The old scholar was right. At this time, it was time to think about his family. What happened at Zhang Shan's house today was already a wake-up call. What if it wasn't what happened today, but someone came to assassinate him? What would the consequences be? Zhang Feng had thought about this since Qian Wanli's death. But he had been busy and forgot about such an important matter. Hearing the old scholar's earnest words, Zhang Feng nodded seriously and said, "Old scholar, don't worry. I have my own plans. After tonight's matter is settled, I will deal with the matters on the mountain. I will not care about this matter anymore." The old scholar heard this and shook his head speechlessly. He knew that Zhang Feng was soft-hearted. With just a few words of flattery, Zhang Feng would definitely run over to work as a coolie for others. But what could he do? What could he say? He could only take it that Zhang Feng had really changed his mind. After all, he had said something serious tonight. Forget it, forget it. I've already told you the severity of the matter. As for how you want to go, that's up to you. If you don't want your woman to be bullied, then you'd better settle down and live your life peacefully. Zhang Feng nodded his head repeatedly. I know. Zhang Feng nodded his head repeatedly. The old scholar was so angry that he glared at Zhang Feng fiercely, shook his head and sighed, and left. Zhang Feng naturally wouldn't wait for someone to come to his house and mess with him. Someone had already come to his house to bully him. If he shrank back now, wouldn't he become a joke? Would he, Zhang Feng, still be a man? Zhang Feng wasn't that kind of person. Since the person had jumped out, if Zhang Feng didn't mercilessly chop off his legs, how could he, Zhang Feng, face himself? Tonight was an opportunity. Zhang Feng wanted to see who this Lord Ma was. Chapter 15:18. Yu Qigong had been holding back all day. It could be said that Yu Qigong and Cheng Yaojin couldn't sit still after hearing that something had happened to Zhang Feng's father-in-law. However, they didn't dare to leave the barracks without permission because of the emperor's order. After enduring for a day, the emperor's imperial edict finally arrived in the evening. However, Cheng Yaojin was dumbfounded when he heard the edict. The emperor's edict was for him to take a stroll outside the city? What was the meaning of this? What the hell? Yu Qigong smiled and clenched his fists. Instantly, there was a burst of sound like beans being fried. Brother, I'm leaving first. Tonight, let's see who can catch this big fish first. Cheng Yaojin looked at Yu Qigong, who was putting on his armor, and gnashed his teeth in anger. However, this was the emperor's order. What could he do? Although they didn't go out, they still knew everything that had happened in the city today. Therefore, they had already guessed this arrangement. However, they never thought that the emperor would wait until now and use such a method. Old Yuqi, wait a moment. Cheng Yaojin waved his hand and dismissed everyone in the barracks. He said with a serious expression, I suspect that something big is going to happen this time. Yu Qigong's hand paused. He tightened his breastplate and said faintly, in fact, this matter could be predicted long ago. From the incident with Qian Wanli until now, haven't you noticed that Fengzi has been looking for an opportunity to find this person? Today's matter is actually a bit strange. Think about it, this person should want to warn Fengzi not to interfere in this matter. But he forgot why Fengzi is called Fengzi. Because once this guy goes crazy, I think both of us will be scared. Cheng Yaojin's expression couldn't help but change. The emperor has sent us out now. Do you think? This matter was really a bit strange. It could also be seen that this was entirely Fengzi's idea and not the emperor's. The emperor would never do such a thing that would damage the reputation of the imperial family. The emperor's strategists wouldn't dare to do so either. Then there was only one person left. That was Zhang Feng. At this time, only he could think of such a way to do such an earth-shattering thing. This was simply crazy to the extreme. It could also be seen that this time, Zhang Feng was prepared to have a good contest with this person. But who was this person? Yu Qigong and Qing Yaojin suddenly felt uneasy. The existence of the Chang'an military camp was to deter and protect the safety of Chang'an city. It should not be used unless it was absolutely necessary. The emperor was born in the army, so he naturally knew this. But at this time, he still chose to use it. What did it mean? Something big was going to happen tonight. The two of them looked at Chang'an city on the sand table in the barracks. His eyelids twitched uncontrollably. Go. Let's go. Yu Qigong didn't waste any more time. After hurriedly putting on his armor, he rushed out of the barracks. Cheng Yaojin stared at the sand table for a long time. Then he took a deep breath and put on his armor. He picked up the broadaxe that he hadn't used for a long time and shouted angrily, "Eru!" Outside the barracks, Jia Eru hurried in and knelt on one knee. "I'm here." "Send out the order. Secretly transfer 1,000 elites. Light clothes and simple travel, and follow me to battle." "Yes." Clatter, clatter, clatter. After a while, in the darkness of the Shishan military camp, a series of dull hoofbeats sounded in an orderly manner. After a while, as the gate of the camp was opened, a team of horses rushed out. After a while, the camp was still as usual. In each barracks, there were still flickering candles. But after this group of people left, in the darkness, a little fluorescent light slowly appeared in the flickering light. People with discerning eyes would definitely find that it was a cigarette. In this little fluorescent light, a pair of eyes stared at the direction where the team of horses went. Then he took a deep puff and turned to disappear into the night. After a while, in the Shirley slope outside Chang'an city, no one knew when several continuous tents appeared. In the dark night, they were particularly protruding. If it weren't for the valley, they would have been discovered by the patrolling soldiers. And these tents were very strange. There was no trace of candlelight or bonfire. No one knew whether it was because they had been here for a long time, or because they were businessmen who had just set up camp here. At this moment, after the faint sounds of horse hooves faded into the distance, a candle light slowly lit up in one of the tents. After a while, a black shadow slowly rushed out from the direction where the hoofbeats came from. In an instant, everyone was on high alert. Someone directly whispered, "Who is it?" "It's me." A hoarse voice came, and everyone relaxed. That person didn't stop at all. He went directly to the tent where the candlelight was burning, knelt down on one knee and shouted, "My lord, Yu Qigong and Qing Yaojin are on the move." "Well, I know." The man in black asked hesitantly, "Then tonight's action?" The voice in the tent said slowly, "Let's wait and see. It's not easy to meet an opponent. Old man wants to see what tricks this kid will play tonight." Looking through the shadow, this person was actually brewing tea in the tent. Chapter 15-19. The man was a little hesitant. But since the old man said so, he could only nod and prepare to leave. At this time the man in the tent asked, "Did someone really transport a lot of gold in the city today?" "I don't know the specifics, but we saw it from afar. There were at least 30 carriages parked at the entrance of the underground palace. When the carriages left, some of the ropes were broken, so this subordinate guessed that they must be carrying gold." "Well," the old man nodded. In an instant, the man was so scared that he trembled all over. He hurriedly knelt down and said, "I'm sorry. I didn't protect the underground palace well. Please punish me, my lord." The teapot in the old man's hand paused. He said lightly, "Forget it. This old man did it on purpose." "Ha!" The man in black was stunned, but he couldn't ask more, so he had to leave in a hurry. Everything that had happened that day had been arranged very well. They had prepared at least 1,000 good men outside the city, and the man in black was the person in charge of watching the Chang'an military camp. Once something happened in the city, he would bring his men of sacrifice to burn down the Chang'an military camp, and then take advantage of the chaos to kill Yu Qigong and Qing Yaojin. The other group of people was ready to attack the people on the mountain. The rest of the people were ready to give Li Shimin a big gift tonight. But when everything was ready, who would have thought that this damn Zhang Feng would actually mess up this originally flawless plan? Who would have thought that this brat would actually be able to find such a secretive underground palace? The man in black was a little angry, but when he saw the figure in the tent, he instinctively felt a little scared. He didn't know why the Lord didn't care about such a big thing in the underground palace at all. They worked hard for more than a year to collect the materials from all the industries abroad and in the Tang dynasty, but they just gave it away. Not to mention others. The man in black's heart was bleeding at this time. The man in black glanced at the tent, then lit a cigarette and looked in the direction of Chang'an City. No one knew what he was thinking. After a while, the man in black seemed to have made up his mind. He crushed the cigarette in his hand, and then rushed into the boundless darkness. After the man in black left, the old man seemed to have sensed something and sighed faintly. Someone immediately asked, "My lord, should we chase the general back?" The old man in the tent was silent for a long time. Then he said faintly, "Let him go. The few of you follow him. If there is any news, report it immediately." Yes. After seeing that everyone had left, the old man in the tent said faintly, "Pass down the message. Everyone retreat 5 miles." Everyone in the dark was stunned. However, they did as they were told. No one knew what the Lord was thinking. Meanwhile, the black-clothed man followed Cheng Yaojin's men closely all the way until they gradually approached the secret passage. Only then did the black-clothed man use the darkness of the night to slowly hide in the grass. After waiting for Cheng Yaojin's men to leave for a full meal's worth of time, the black-clothed man flashed and entered the secret passage. The black-robed man was in no hurry. Leaning against the cold wall of the secret passage, he rested for a moment. Then he carefully took out a bamboo cage the size of a fist from his arms. There were a few squeaking sounds of mice in the bamboo cage. The black-clothed man poured the mice in the bamboo cage onto the ground. The mice seemed to be very human. They sniffed the black-clothed man's feet, and then carefully entered the secret passage. After a while, the sound of mice squeaking leisurely sounded one after another in the secret passage. At first, there were only 1 or 2 mice. Not long after, the squeaking sounds of the mice became one. At this time, the black-clothed man slowly lay on the ground. His hands and feet tiptoed like an ape as he slowly crawled into the secret passage on the ground. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Ding dong. Ding dong. Following the sound that only belonged to the darkness, there was no trace of abnormality. The black-clothed man gathered his courage and slowly stood up. In this underground palace, there were treasures that could rival the imperial treasury. Today, seeing so many people looting there, it would be a lie to say that he was not moved. How many brothers have lost their lives for this thing? The man in black saw everything that happened in the city today. He watched helplessly as his bodyguard and his brother's home were sealed by the imperial guards. He saw with his own eyes that his former subordinates had to commit suicide in order to keep the secret. It was all for this thing. Isn't it just an emptied underground palace? When night fell, he had secretly sneaked in and found that there was a lot of gold left after a hurried excavation. His lord didn't care, the emperor didn't care, but he cared. He wasn't a greedy person. But he had to think of his dead brothers. He wanted to use this money to make their lives better. He also knew that this was a serious crime that could be beheaded. This was treason. Since he followed his lord to do this, he knew it. But he didn't know why he set foot on this path. Perhaps it was because he believed in it, or because he was attracted by the Lord's reward of being a general. In his opinion, a man should go to the battlefield. The Wei River Alliance was a humiliation. This was not something a man should do. Moreover, it was the emperor. The battle at Tong Pass. Because he failed to stop Xieli Khan, as a Qianhu, he could only watch as his brothers fell one by one. In the end, what could he do? He could only watch. In the end, he was even punished for not being able to pass on the military intelligence in time, and was removed from his post. So he was ruthless. In the end, his lord found him. Only then did he decide to join his lord. Only then did everything happen today. Looking at the door close at hand, the black-clothed man's heart surged even more. He had come to this place more than once. He had come here today and saw with his own eyes that there was nothing here other than the dozens of imperial guards above them. Li Shimin was really muddle-headed. He said that he was a soldier, but he couldn't find this place, this secret passage. He only cared about the money in front of him. Haha. This was the real Li Shimin? Otherwise, how could he do such a stupid thing as the Wei River Alliance? The black-clothed man's face showed a trace of mockery as he gently pushed open the heavy stone door. But in the next moment, something cold suddenly appeared on his neck. The black-clothed man's soul almost left his body, without waiting for him to make any movements. More MO swords were already on his body. At this time a cold voice slowly sounded. Don't move. Chapter 1520. The man in black instantly had goosebumps all over his body. At this moment, wasn't there no one else in this underground palace? How could there be so many people? Gulp. The man in black swallowed his saliva with difficulty. He looked at the torches in the underground palace in shock. In an instant, at least 100 imperial guards with strong crossbows were aiming at him. As long as he showed the slightest bit of abnormality, the arrows would instantly shoot him into a sieve. At this moment, a person he was extremely familiar with slowly walked out from behind the imperial guards. The person who came was Qin Xiong in a white robe. It seems that Fengzi's plan is really good. He really caught a big fish. Qin Xiong called out. In an instant, a group of imperial guards dragged the black-robed man in and tied him up. They even found a hemp rope that was flowing with black water and tied it tightly around his mouth. At this moment, only then did someone remove his black robe. When he saw his face, Qin Xiong could not help but frown and instantly fly into a rage. Wang Junqi, so it's you. The black-robed man chuckled and looked at Qin Xiong. Shu Bao, long time no see. Wang Junqi was not a small figure. Wagong 5 Tiger General, a green dragon crescent blade, a date red horse, the Wang Junqi who had once terrified the enemy on the battlefield. Qin Xiong grabbed Wang Junqi's collar angrily and said, Tell me, we're all old acquaintances. Who exactly is it that can make you do such a rebellious thing? Hee. Wang Junqi sneered and struggled for a while. Qin Xiong was furious, but he still let go of Wang Junqi and said, Now are you still going to be stubborn? If you turn back now, even if I lose my official position, I can still protect your sex. Forget it. Wang Junqi struggled to move his limbs. Although his entire body was wrapped in ropes, he spat out the smelly thing in his mouth and sat on the steps. He looked at Qin Xiong and said, Do you have a cigarette? Qin Xiong was furious. However, he still personally lit a cigarette for him. After thinking for a while, he waved his hand and asked his men to go out through the secret passage to see if there was an ambush. Although Qin Xiong knew that Yu Qigong and Cheng Yaojin were outside, if he could barge in alone, it meant that there must be someone outside. Moreover, who was Wang Junqi? Even the people behind him would not allow him to trespass into this place alone. If that person was really as capable as he had guessed. Wang Junqi took the cigarette and enjoyed it. He didn't stop the imperial guards. After he finished smoking, he said, You don't have to do this. It was my idea to come here today. Then tell me, what are your plans? Qin Xiong asked relentlessly. Wang Junqi chuckled and said, You don't have to ask about this. The reason I'm here today is to get some gold back. After all, you know that back at Tong Pass, almost all of our brothers were wiped out in that battle. But the outcome was that I didn't deliver the news in time, and the imperial city of Chang'an was in danger. Haha. Wang Junqi smiled bitterly. Instantly, a hint of anger appeared in his eyes. If not for his incompetence, would the Tang dynasty have suffered such humiliation? If he had chosen to retreat to Luozhou, would the entire Tang dynasty have been humiliated? My brothers would not have died in vain. Shut up. Qin Xiong shouted angrily. His Majesty made his own decision. It was good to retreat to Luozhou, but have you thought about what would happen to the Tang dynasty if His Majesty retreated? Would the people of Chang'an city be able to withstand the butcher's knife of Xieli? You don't think about anything but your hatred. Have you ever thought about who His Majesty would vent his humiliation on? Qin Xiong was a man of few words, but Wang Junqi really provoked him today. He had fantasized for a long time in his heart, and thought about who would be fooled. However, he never thought that the one who would be fooled would be Wang Junqi. Today's plan. He was supposed to be the one. He should be stationed in the imperial city. However, a secret order ordered his soldiers to stay in the imperial city, and His Majesty personally ordered him to stay here. Unexpectedly. Back then, Qin Qiong was a little pretentious to Wang Junqi, and their friendship was not shallow. Today he never thought that it would be Wang Junqi. And even now, Wang Junqi was still brooding over the matter of the Wei River alliance. Qin Qiong sighed and didn't say anything more. After calming down he said, "Old Wang, can you stop being so stubborn? You just need to tell me the person behind this. I guarantee with my head that His Majesty will not make things difficult for you." Wang Junqi smiled bitterly and said, "Forget it. You and I both know that since I chose this path, I have already thought about the ending. By the way, let me tell you, I personally found someone to dig this underground palace. Since I've lost, I have nothing to say. You can kill me or torture me as you wish." Chapter 15:21. At night. The people in the underground palace were still lying in ambush. But Wang Junqi had been secretly escorted back to the palace to await the emperor's execution. But the first step was to pry open his mouth. In the imperial study. At this time, Li Shimin still didn't feel sleepy at all. He didn't even have the slightest intention to read the memorials. They were all piled up to Fang Xianling and Du Ruhui. In the imperial study, Zhang Sunwuji, Fang Xianling, Du Ruhui, and Wei Zheng were all busy. Ever since the underground palace incident in Chang'an was leaked, the secret letters had been sent out in an endless stream. At this time, in addition to cigarette butts under everyone's feet, there were waste papers all over the floor. Cigarettes were the only source of support for them. Until now, they finally understood why Zhang Feng admired this thing so much. This thing was really a divine thing to refresh the mind. And cigarettes had become the standard of all the officials in the entire Tang dynasty. Without cigarettes, not to mention others, even they would feel a little degrading. The first thing to do when going to work was a cup of tea and a cigarette. Whether to smoke or not depended on the person. In a moment, the whole room was full of smoke. But what was this? This was a new trend. It was good stuff. At this time, Xiao Gizi walked into the imperial study in a panic. He was carelessly knocked by the threshold and fell down instantly. Xiao Gizi was so scared that he hurriedly exclaimed, "Your Majesty, the big fish took the bait." Wow. In an instant, whether it was Li Shimin or Wei Zheng and the others instantly raised their heads from the pile of small pieces of paper. "What did you say?" "Who?" Li Shimin suddenly asked. "It's..." Xiao Gizi looked at Wei Zheng hesitantly. But when he turned to look at Li Shimin, he trembled and hurriedly said, "It's General Wang Junqi." Buzz. Li Shimin's head instantly exploded. Wang Junqi? How could it be Wang Junqi? This was simply impossible. "Tell me in detail," Li Shimin said with a wave of his sleeve. He couldn't believe that Wang Junqi was the one they caught tonight. This person was a direct subordinate of the military, but because of the incident at Tongguan, he had been recuperating at home. If not for hearing this name today, Li Shimin would have almost forgotten about this person. Back then, it was he who was stationed at Tong Pass. Because the civil officials in the court had been holding on to the fact that he had delayed reporting military intelligence, almost half of the civil officials were impeaching him. Under the pressure, Li Shimin had no choice but to punish him and order him to recuperate at home. But at this time, Li Shimin did not expect that this Wang Junqi would actually walk on such a path. The faces of Wei Zheng, Zhang Sunwuji, and the others also changed greatly at this time. They did not dare to say anything. They all knew the weight of this Wang Junqi in the army. But at this moment, what does his appearance mean? And it was at this time. The secret passage in this place was only known to those people. That was to say, Wang Junqi had already. Thinking of this, Wei Zheng and the others did not dare to say anything. If they said anything wrong at this time, what awaited them was the emperor's anger. Li Shimin was trembling all over at this time. He staggered a step, put his hands on the desk, and pointed at Xiao Gizi with a trembling finger. "Where is he?" "Your Majesty," General Qin is personally escorting him to the imperial study. Send him in. I want to see him immediately. Yes, Your Majesty. Li Shimin smoked one cigarette after another in the time it took to eat a meal. His face was so cold that it was about to drip water. Wei Zheng and the others did not dare to disturb or make a sound. At this time, the emperor had already fallen into extreme anger. Anyone who made a sound at this time was courting death. Amidst a flurry of footsteps and the clashing of armor, Li Shimin's eyes stared deeply at the door of the imperial study. Qin Xiong's white robe slowly appeared outside the imperial study and reported, "I, Qin Xiong, escort the suspect to see you. Come in." Li Shimin waved his sleeve and ordered. Looking at Wang Junqi behind Qin Xiong, Wei Zheng and the others hurriedly stood up in horror. This person was one of the 5 tiger generals of Wagong. Who didn't know at that time? Who didn't know? But because of the Wei River Alliance and the defeat at Tong Pass, this person actually. As soon as they entered the imperial study, Qin Xiong explained the situation briefly, and then stood to the side. Li Shimin looked at Wang Junqi. It could be said that Wang Junqi had been looking at him since he saw him. Wang Junko also looked at Li Shiming proudly. Li Shiming and Li Shiming looked at each other. "Your Highness Duke of Qin." It was Wang Junqi who spoke. But Qin Xiong's face suddenly changed, and he shouted angrily, "How dare you? Call him His Majesty." Li Shimin took a deep breath and slowly walked down from the dragon throne. He walked to Wang Junqi and said in a low voice, "General Wang, we were old friends when we were in Wagong. Today, as long as you tell me everything you know, I don't think I will hurt you. I will guarantee that you and your family will not have to worry about food and clothing for the rest of your life. What do you think? I know that you were harmed by a thief. You also know my temper. As long as you tell me who the thief is, I will immediately write you a decree that I will not hurt you in the future. What do you think?" Chapter 1522. Your Majesty, since we've been friends for so long, you naturally know my temperament. Let's not waste words. If you want to kill me, do as you please. I won't say a word. How many brothers did you have at Tong Pass? But what about you? You know that there were less than 20,000 soldiers stationed at Tong Pass. But what did we face? Tens of thousands of Turkic elites. Back then, Brother Shan's son personally sent a letter, but he was cut up right in front of me. Also, all of Wagang's brothers died one by one. Back then, you promised your brothers that you didn't ask for great wealth, but to live a carefree life. But after the Wei River Alliance, what did you do? You didn't say a word about the deaths of our brothers, and you even issued an edict to question. 50,000 soldiers against less than 20,000, and Tong Pass was completely surrounded. Even if we had wings, we couldn't fly out. How many brothers died in vain to deliver the letter? Do you know? That's enough. Qin Xiong's eyes were bloodshot as he roared. Wang Junqi, do you know what His Majesty faced back then? It was the impeachment of all the civil and military officials. More than 50 officials demanded your execution, but what did His Majesty say? His Majesty used his head as a guarantee to suppress the protests of the court officials. You say that His Majesty doesn't care about old ties, but have you seen Wagong? His Majesty has already ordered those brothers who died tragically to be sent back to Wagong for a grand funeral. What else do you want? Is this the reason for your disobedience and rebellion? Qin Xiong was furious. He couldn't wait to kill him. He even had the urge to do so. Even now you're still so stubborn, and you still want to infuriate His Majesty. How can I save you? My brothers? Li Shimin sighed deeply. He slumped down on the steps and leaned against the cold table. He said, I haven't forgotten any of my brothers from back then, and I don't dare to forget. You may not know, but I'm most afraid of nighttime. I'm afraid that as soon as I close my eyes, my brothers from back then will come looking for me. So, I've been desperately trying to build the Tang dynasty that my brothers imagined when they drank and chatted merrily. But I'm tired too. Forget it, let's not talk about it anymore. We only need one sentence. Who is the person behind you? Wang Junqi's eyes trembled slightly, but he quickly covered it up. He took a deep breath and said, I admit that I did something wrong. But I, Wang Jun, I'm not a person who goes back on his words. So, Your Highness, please don't ask anymore. Wang Junqi, this is your last chance. His Majesty has said that he will ensure your safety. Why are you so obsessed? Qin Qiong was so anxious that he wanted to beat Wang Junqi up. It was just a name. Moreover, this place was filled with their own people. No one would leak this information out. Why are you still holding on here? Don't you know how serious the crime of treason is? Fang Xianling couldn't sit still at this time. He hurriedly advised, Junqi, you know the outcome of this matter. What are you holding on to? Do you think that person really wants to give you an explanation? That person is just using you. His purpose is to usurp the throne. Do you understand? Wang Junqi smiled bitterly and said, I didn't understand at the beginning. But when he asked me to build this underground palace and design it according to the layout of the political announcement palace, I understood. I hesitated at the beginning, but he said that a man, a warrior, is born to be suitable. But the place is only the battlefield. A soldier who doesn't go to the battlefield is like an old horse. He has nothing but revenge. But I'm not suitable for such a comfortable environment. As Qin Qiong just said, I'm afraid that when I'm free, those brothers will come to me in my dreams. So if you want to kill me, do whatever you want. I won't tell you what you want. Fang Xianling heard this and couldn't help but sigh with regret. No more words. The entire imperial study was filled with sighs at this time. Li Shimon's chest was violently heaving and his face was unnaturally red. Xiao Gizi was so frightened that he hurriedly went forward to wipe Li Shimon's chest. Li Shimon slapped Xiao Gizi's hand away and stared at Xiao Gizi. He stared into Wang Junqi's eyes with the same blood-red eyes. The distance between the two of them was only 7 inches. After a while, Li Shimon angrily waved his hand and said, Guards! Here. Qin Qiong's eyes flashed with despair, but he still knelt on one knee. Li Shimon said slowly, Take Wang Junqi away. Before the morning court tomorrow, ask for that person's name. Yes, sir. Without waiting for Qin Qiong to finish, Li Shimon closed his eyes and said lightly, At all costs. Qin Qiong's heart trembled. Wang Junqi didn't hand it over to the Ministry of Justice or the Supreme Court. Instead, he handed it over to him. This meant that the emperor didn't trust others. What could he ask? Perhaps the emperor was giving Wang Junqi one last chance. Thinking of this, Qin Qiong hurriedly said, Yes, sir. Chapter 15:23. Giddy up. Giddy up. In the night, one man and one horse rushed out of Chang'an city and disappeared into the night. In the darkness of the night, Cheng Yaojin and the people who were waiting and lying in ambush all saw this scene. No one knew what this meant. Cheng Yaojin looked at the direction where the horse disappeared and frowned slightly. After a moment of contemplation, he waved his battle axe and said, Pass down the order. Everyone is to spread out and tie a strip of white cloth to Lao Tzu's sleeves. If you encounter anyone, let Lao Tzu break their legs first. Especially in Chang'an city and along the way to Shao Mountain. Pay attention to the layout. Yes. This horse. It was obvious that something big had happened to the emperor, and he had gone to Shao Mountain to report to Fengzi. What exactly was this major event? But what was certain was that there had been a huge change. And in another direction, in a tent with flickering candlelight in the woods of Shirley Slope, one of the figures was stunned for a moment after hearing this report. Then he sighed and didn't say anything else. After a while, the voice of the old man in the tent slowly sounded, Send the message. Have someone send the message into the city. Tell the people in the city to attack. Also, the people outside the city withdraw. Hearing this, everyone was in an uproar. He hurriedly asked, My lord, there is only one step left. All the arrangements. If we retreat now, the consequences will be unimaginable. There were at least 1,000 people here, and behind them, countless people could be seen standing motionless not far away. At this moment, everyone was silent as if they were waiting for the person in the tent to give the order. They had been planning for today's operation for a long time. If he gave up now, that would be. They really couldn't understand why his lord didn't gather all his men today, but chose to launch a surprise attack. Even if he took down the imperial palace, what was the point? In the blink of an eye, they would be surrounded by tens of thousands of soldiers outside the city. Moreover, this did not include the 5,000 well-equipped Golden Guards and the 8,000 Imperial Guards. These were all elites among elites. Even if there were 10,000 people gathered here, even if the great general could break through the Imperial city, how could they face the Imperial Guards and Golden Guards in the city? This was something that everyone was confused about. If they knew that everything that happened today was just a test, and that the mysterious man had no intention of attacking the palace, then what would they think? Outside the tent, everyone was looking at the shadow in the candlelight. However, the person inside the tent still had his eyes closed. No one knew what he was thinking. A moment later, the teapot on the stove gurgled as steam rose from it. The person in the tent slowly said, "Pass down the order." The people outside the city can disperse and return to their positions. Without Old Man's orders, no one is allowed to act on their own. Even more so, no one is allowed to reveal tonight's operation. Everyone was stunned. After an entire night of preparation, and even sacrificing some of the soldiers in the city, they gave up just like that? The mysterious person in the tent did not say anything. However, when he heard the rustling outside the tent, he knew that everyone was filled with dissatisfaction and doubt. He could only calmly say, "Something happened to the great general. There's an ambush in the city tonight." What? On the other side, the scout hurriedly arrived at the foot of the desolate mountain. He did not go up the mountain. Instead, he passed a bamboo tube to a person who had been waiting there for a long time. Then, the two of them instantly went in opposite directions. One went up the mountain while the other returned to the city. The moment the two of them separated, a group of soldiers once again went into hiding as if nothing had happened here. That person urged his horse to gallop towards the entrance of White Deer College. After passing the tube to a person at the entrance of White Deer College, he turned back. At the entrance of the college was the small wooden hut that Zhang Feng was in previously. When Li Chengqian, who was drinking tea, heard this, he hurriedly stood up and rushed to the door. The secret memorial from the messenger appeared in Li Chengqian's hands. Li Chengqian did not have time to think. He quickly opened it. There were only a few words. The big fish took the bait. The big fish was Wang Zhengqi. When Li Chengqian saw this, his hands trembled, and he almost tore the note apart. Wang Zhengqi. That person was amazing. He was actually able to pull him down. Who exactly was this person? Li Chengqian did not have time to think. He hurriedly pulled the note and rushed out of the wooden hut, galloping towards Zhang Feng's location. Today's events in the city instantly became complicated and confusing. They actually managed to lure out the former 5 tiger generals of Wagong village. What did this mean? Was it someone from the military? Or could it be that someone even more powerful than the military had infiltrated the city? Could it be that something even more terrifying was waiting for them tonight? Li Chengqian did not have time to think too much. It was useless to think too much. This was a game of chess, a game of chess. How could he participate in such a game of chess? However, being able to participate in it already made Li Chengqian extremely excited. What was this? This was a real battlefield. Using the people's hearts as expectations, and using a city as a battlefield. This was simply more exciting than personally leading hundreds of thousands of soldiers on the battlefield, or guiding hundreds of thousands of soldiers in battle. Chapter 1524. Tonight was destined to be a sleepless night. Yu Shernan and the others on the mountain didn't sleep. They were all watching every move in Chang'an City. And the person who tipped them off was naturally Du Go. Zhang Feng naturally didn't feel sleepy. He was also a little excited and looking forward to such a wonderful battle. Although he didn't like it, Zhang Feng was still looking forward to the result, since he could meet such an opponent. Although he didn't know what the result would be if they failed tonight. But Zhang Feng's intuition told him that tonight's plan wouldn't fail. After all, he had played the simulated battlefield game countless times. He often read countless novels, movies, and military stories. Although it was the first time for Zhang Feng to participate in such a scene in person, That kind of heroic feeling made Zhang Feng a little eager to know what kind of organization would be involved in tonight's big fish. In Zhang Feng's memory, he had never seen any record of this matter in the old and new books of the Tang dynasty, as well as various versions of the Tang dynasty novels, movies, and TV shows. At this time, Zhang Feng was a little confused. Did this world really return to the Tang dynasty more than 1,000 years ago? Or did it time travel to a parallel world similar to the Tang dynasty? Fengzi. At this time, Li Chengqian's voice instantly refreshed Zhang Feng. He got up from the recliner quickly, glanced in the direction of Chang'an city, and then looked at the moon in the night sky. He hurriedly asked Gao Qin to open the door. Li Chengqian hurriedly went to the balcony on the second floor and hurriedly said, Fengzi, something happened. What happened? The big fish took the bait. Oh. Hearing that, Zhang Feng instantly reached out his hand excitedly and said, Where is the thing? Li Chengqian hurriedly handed the thing in his hand to Zhang Feng and said, I was wondering who it would be before, but I never thought it would be this person. Zhang Feng also couldn't wait. But when he saw the content of the note, he couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Stunned, he asked, Is your information accurate? Li Chengqian nodded solemnly. If nothing happened to the person who came, then this news must be accurate. Zhang Feng sucked in a breath of cold air. Oh my God, how could it be him? Wang Junqi. Zhang Feng was very familiar with this person. Anyone who had read the romance of the Sui and Tang dynasties would be familiar with this person. Wang Junqi, one of the 5 tiger generals of Wagong. After Li Shimin ascended the throne, this person rarely appeared in public. For some reason, the Book of Tang and the historical records were vague about the ending of the Wagong people. There was even a blank period where no one knew what happened. However, if not for this name appearing before Zhang Feng's eyes, Zhang Feng would have almost forgotten about this place. Wagong. Zhang Feng asked again with some hesitation. Is this person Wang Junqi, one of the 5 tiger generals of Wagong? Li Chengqian nodded. If the news is correct, it is this person. And if it were someone else, they wouldn't pass the news like this. This time Zhang Feng was even more certain. Was this blank period in this period of history because of this? But it shouldn't be. The Shan brothers had already died in battle. Almost all the brothers of Wagong had gone to live a carefree life. At this time, if they rebelled, who could stop them? What was there to do tonight? If he really met Wagong, Zhang Feng would turn around and leave without saying a word. The key was that today's matter was strange. Wagong people were almost all dead, and the marvelous mathematician was dead. At this time, no one in Wagong had such wisdom. The key was that this person was familiar with him and the affairs of the imperial court. This person was definitely not from Wagong. Wagong, Wang Junqi. Zhang Feng couldn't help but look solemn. He thought a lot about the ending of Wagong. According to the historical records, Wagong was basically at the last stop at this time. Most of them were dead or injured. In addition, when Li Shimin was the crown prince, he and Li Yuan had been targeting Wagong and Wagang's forces. Therefore, when Li Shimin ascended the throne, there were not many people left in Wagong. At this time, Wagong people appeared again. What did it mean? Was someone instigating it? Or, Zhang Feng was also a little uncertain. He couldn't help thinking about what happened tonight again. He asked, Go and ask what on earth is going on. Did Wang Junqi destroy this place? Or did he personally lead people there? Or did he act alone? Li Chengqian asked in surprise. Is this very important? Zhang Feng nodded. I'm just curious. The 5 tiger generals of Wagong can be reduced to this. I really don't know what to say. Li Chengqian's face froze. He briefly told Zhang Feng about Wagong and the battle at Tong Pass. Hearing this, Zhang Feng suddenly understood. But Zhang Feng was looking in the direction of Chang'an city at this time. After a while he sighed and said, Go back and tell them to sleep. Li Chengqian was shocked when he heard this. He hurriedly asked, Why? Chapter 1527. Report. At the same time, a hurried voice sounded outside the imperial study. Li Shimin, who was worrying about what to do, was startled. He hurriedly said, "Speak." The imperial guard at the door hurriedly said, "Your Majesty, someone with the identity card of the Chancellor of White Deer College just sent a message." Li Shimin's face suddenly lit up. He hurriedly said, "Speak quickly." President Zhang said that this time the enemy seemed to have left in a hurry. Maybe they didn't plan to move in advance. So the accident in Zhang Shan's mansion in East City today was just for the child. The purpose was to prepare for the evacuation. Hearing this, Li Shimin and the others' faces instantly changed. Wei Zheng directly exclaimed, "What? When did this message come? And what else did he say?" Hearing this, the Imperial Guard looked at Li Shimin and then at Wei Zheng. Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "Dian, it's fine." Hearing this, the Imperial Guard continued, "This happened 2 hours ago. I heard that when he was in Chang'an City, the guards of Chang'an City did not allow him to enter. It was only when General Cheng showed up that he was allowed to enter. It seems that he was delayed for more than 4 hours." Hearing this, Li Shimin was speechless. He was so angry that he slapped the table and shouted, "Damn it! Give the order that all the guards guarding the city gate of Chang'an will be suspended for a year. Tomorrow morning, no one will receive 30 beatings." At such a critical moment, if this matter wasn't important, why would Zhang Feng personally send someone to deliver the message? This was simply preposterous. Li Shimin was so angry that he wanted to kill someone. Seeing this, Wei Zheng hurriedly advised, "Your Majesty, the situation inside and outside the city tonight is unknown. It is understandable for the city guard to do this. If the person who was let in is an enemy spy, it is also unknown. Let's listen to what he has to say first. What do you think?" Li Shimin nodded. "Continue." At this time, that Imperial Guard said while trembling with fear. That person said, "Principal Zhang said, this underground palace definitely still has some secrets that haven't been taken away, so tonight there will definitely be people who will come to take some things back. Moreover, these things are definitely things that can expose that person." Report. At this moment, another chamberlain of imperial insignia rushed over and interrupted Li Shimin. Li Shimin waved his hand. "What is it?" "Your Majesty, Chang'an's Chunming Gate, Yanqing Gate, and Yinping Gate are on fire. The shops along the streets of the eastern and western markets are all on fire. The Guang residence next to the Eastern Palace and Yongchang's second market square are also on fire." "What?" Li Shimin was shocked when he heard this. So many places were on fire at once. This was definitely not a normal occurrence. It was definitely a backup plan prepared by someone. Li Shimin hastily ordered, "Order all the soldiers and city guards to put out the fire as soon as possible." "Yes, Your Majesty." The fire at the city gate was a matter of losing face. More importantly, they did not know if there were other hidden reasons behind it. More importantly, the person just now said that there was something important in the underground palace. These 3 city gates were almost all unimportant city gates. Even in such a situation tonight, the troops deployed by Li Shimin were only a few hundred. Most of the soldiers were concentrated at the few important city gates. But who would have thought that this person would actually choose to attack these city gates that were not used in a normal day? These city gates were almost all used by the people in the city for farming, cattle, and lambs. Usually, only people who poured night incense would go in and out a few times. These city gates were more or less forgotten by Li Shimin already. But now, all of the city gates that he had set up were fine. Only this place had a problem. Also, it was the eastern and western markets. This place was an important commercial area of Chang'an City. It was a big deal if this place was on fire. Li Shimin had no choice but to put out the fire. As for the Guang residence and Yongchang's second market, these places were closest to the Eastern Palace. At this moment, these places didn't seem to be connected at all. But Li Shimin, who was looking at the map, suddenly realized the importance of these places. If he didn't put out the fire, it would definitely cause irreparable losses. More importantly, Li Shimin's face had been slapped so hard that it sounded like a slap. This was the most fatal. And once the fire was put out, it would definitely disperse all the soldiers in the city, which also meant that all his plans would be ruined. What exactly were these people trying to do? Li Shimon's face was terrifyingly gloomy. At this moment he was staring at a few places on the map, but his eyes were fixed on Yongjiao Lane in the city. This was the main point. If Feng Zi's guess was right, then what this person wanted to do was nothing more than to create an opportunity for them, like what happened at Zhang Shan's residence today. When he thought of this, Li Shimon pulled out the sword hanging on the pillar of the imperial study and shouted angrily, "Come, follow me out of the palace. I want to see what kind of trouble this thief is trying to cause tonight." Chapter 1530. Li Chengqian's arrival did not attract the attention of the people on the city gate tower. After a lot of twists and turns, Li Chengqian was able to enter the city gate. As soon as he entered the city, Li Chengqian was shocked by what he saw in the city. On the streets of the city, there were more people than usual during the day. Men and women of all ages were hurriedly carrying buckets and basins filled to the brim with water, walking back and forth. The ground was a mess. There were also countless pieces of rotten wood that had not been completely extinguished. The smoke made people unable to open their eyes. "Your Highness, please go back quickly. There is a fire in the mansion." At this moment, an imperial guard came in a hurry from Yanqing Gate. After seeing Li Chengqian, he hurried forward to report. Li Chengqian's face changed instantly. He asked, "What's going on?" "Your Highness, don't you know?" The imperial guard looked at Li Chengqian, and the guard behind him in surprise. He said, "An hour ago someone set fire in Chang'an city at the same time. Yanqing, Yanping, Chunming, and Guangzhai, the east and the west were all on fire at the same time." "What?" Li Chengqian's face changed instantly. He did not care about anything else. He hurriedly waved his horse whip and rushed in the direction of the imperial city. Zhang Feng just said that this matter was over, but there might be some small tricks. At that time, Li Chengqian did not pay attention to it. But now, after hearing the imperial guard's words, he instantly understood what Zhang Feng meant. This was more than just a small trick. They wanted to mess up the whole Chang'an city so that they could profit from it. What exactly were these people thinking? Didn't Zhang Feng say that this matter was over and nothing would happen outside the city tonight? Li Chengqian's head was like a mass of paste at this moment. He had been thinking. This matter was similar to what Zhang Feng just said. He wondered how many similarities there were. But after thinking for a long time, he finally thought of one thing. That was the people tonight were destined to be prepared. However, because something happened to Wang Junqi's people, the layout inside and outside the city completely failed. At this moment, Li Chengqian thought about it from his own point of view. Instantly, all the hair on Li Chengqian's body stood up. Now that the people outside the city have left, what will happen to the people inside the city? They must have known that something had happened outside the city, so they wanted to use this method to mix in with the chaos and get out of the city. Thinking of this, Li Chengqian hurriedly pulled on the reins and said to the leader of the imperial bodyguards behind him, "Quickly go and report to General Yuqi. Tell him that no matter what, he must not open the gates tonight. The rebels in the city must be prepared to take advantage of the chaos to escape." When the guard leader heard this, his expression changed slightly as he replied, "Yes." Li Chengqian hurriedly returned to the Eastern Palace. After confirming that everything was fine, he went straight to the Imperial Palace. Tonight's events were too unimaginable. Danger lurked everywhere. If the mysterious man did something else tonight, they would be in big trouble. After all, this Guang house was the closest place to the Eastern Palace, and belonged to the residence of the 16th prince. Basically, this place belonged to the royal family and so on. The imperial edict, princes, and ministers all lived here. Usually, this place was the most guarded place in Chang'an, and except for the imperial palace. However, at this moment, there was a fire here. What did that mean? It meant that there were probably spies of the mysterious man in this place? Or subordinates? At this moment, Li Chengqian followed the way that Zhang Feng said to think from the enemy's point of view. After carefully sorting out the situation, he was shocked to find that Chang'an city was really in a precarious situation at this time. First, he used the disturbance in Chang'an city to attract everyone's attention and lead Fengzi down the mountain. Then he used the fire in this house to make Zhang Feng jump over there. At the same time, he also created an absolutely safe opportunity for them to evacuate and deploy to Chang'an city. Then, as long as Zhang Feng didn't find this underground palace, then the ending. It was destined that tonight's matter would not be so simple. If Zhang Feng found out, it would be a complete disgrace to the royal family. Someone dared to build an underground political announcement hall under his nose. It would be a disgrace if word got out. Would the emperor allow this to happen? Even if the emperor was willing, the officials would not agree. This person took advantage of this and the relationship between the emperor and Zhang Feng to come up with such a vicious plan. Now, seeing that the plan had failed, what would the mysterious man do at this time? After thinking hard for a moment, Li Chengqian suddenly thought of a terrible thing. He was wrong. Everything was wrong. This mysterious man didn't want people in the city to go out. Instead, he wanted to use other people to kill these people in the chaos. Was he trying to silence them? Destroy the corpses? At this thought, Li Chengqian was instantly horrified. At this moment, Li Chengqian looked up and saw a cold Mo Dao blocking his way. He found that he had already arrived at the door of the imperial study. Li Chengqian didn't dare to delay and hurriedly reported, "Greetings, father." Chapter 1531. In the imperial study, Li Shimin had already put on the armor he hadn't worn for a long time. He was gesturing with Wei Zheng and the people from the military around the sand table. It seemed that the emperor was about to go to war. Li Chengqian panicked at the thought of this. Hearing Li Chengqian's voice, Li Shimin abruptly turned around and waved his hand, ordering the officials to withdraw for the time being. He hurriedly called Li Chengqian into the imperial study. Li Shimin was also shocked by Li Chengqian's expression. Li Shimin asked as soon as Li Chengqian entered, "Is there anything wrong with the Eastern Palace?" "Father, there's nothing wrong with the Eastern Palace, but the situation in Chang'an." Li Shimin gestured for Li Chengqian to keep quiet, then motioned for Li Chengqian to enter the rear hall. Behind the imperial study was where Li Shimin rested. It was a room slightly smaller than the imperial study. There was nothing inside except for some daily necessities. At this time Li Shimin asked, "Did Fengzi send any message?" "Fengzi said that we've already won." Li Shimin frowned and asked, "Then what's with the fire in the city? If we've won, what about the incident in the city?" For the first time, Li Shimin doubted Zhang Feng's judgment. He had thought that the matter was over, but before he could catch his breath, he heard Fengzi speculating that there was a big secret in the underground palace. And before he could react, he heard about the fire in Chang'an. If this matter was over, then what was it? It was nothing more than Li Shimin getting angry. If Li Chengqian didn't know what Zhang Feng meant, he wouldn't have understood either. Right now, seeing Li Shimin's anger, he hastily said, "Father Emperor, please calm down first. Listen to Urchin's detailed explanation." Li Shimin lit a cigarette and looked at the candlelight with his hands behind his back, indicating for Li Chengqian to speak. Seeing this, Li Chengqian said, "Father, Fengzi told me everything that happened today. I only completely understood today's battle afterwards. Fengzi said that today's battle was even more ferocious and dangerous than personally leading hundreds of thousands of troops. He said that we have to think from another perspective. He also said that today he actually only used one move, which was reasonable and unexpected. He also asked me to say that if I were to go." Li Chengqian repeated Zhang Feng's words and added his own understanding of the situation. Li Shimin calmed down as he listened. Listening carefully to Li Shimin's words, Li Shimin's mind slowly recalled everything that had happened today. In an instant, it was as if the whole of Chang'an had come alive. Everything that had happened today appeared in his mind, and the general plan of the entire Chang'an city. It was a wonderful feeling. It was also very unclear, especially when Li Chengqian said that he had to think from another perspective. Zhang Feng had said this sentence countless times, but every time Li Shimin encountered something, especially an emergency, he could not think of it. At this time, listening to Li Chengqian's words, all the things that he did not understand before suddenly became clear. However, Li Shimin still frowned and asked, "What do these things have to do with the fire in Chang'an City now?" Hearing this, Li Chengqian felt an unprecedented feeling from his father for the first time, which was to face him head-on. Yes, it was to face him head-on. Li Chengqian's character was a bit of a procrastinator and a little timid. However, today's matter had his own different opinions, which made Li Shimin feel a little surprised. Li Chengqian said, "In fact, we have to start from what Fengzi said was reasonable and unexpected. Everything that happened today was actually planned by the mysterious person. For example, what kind of reaction would we have when we found the underground palace? He had already thought about it thoroughly. What would happen if we didn't find the underground palace? He had already planned everything that we could think of. Although I haven't been to the underground palace, since he could imitate the political announcement hall, he must have known about you, Prime Minister Wei, Fengzi, and the others. He must be very familiar with them. Therefore, he had already thought of everything that you could think of. However, I guess that this Wang junkie seems to be an accident. It seems that for some reason, or because he was blinded by money, or because he really came to find some secrets, he was exposed." Fengzi thought about it from Wang Junkie's perspective. He said that this person used to be one of the 5 tiger generals. To be able to get him, he must have promised something extraordinary. Perhaps it was a high position and generous salary, or something else. However, he was bound to be a tiger general in the hands of that person. The loss of this person was bound to make the mysterious person suffer a heavy blow. Therefore, tonight's matter has already been exposed. In order to hide his identity, this person set fire in Chang'an City. Li Shimin asked with some surprise. "Could it be that you're talking about those people in the city preparing to escape?" Li Chengqian nodded, then shook his head and said bitterly, "At the beginning, I also guessed so. However, when I thought of what Zhang Feng said was reasonable and unexpected, I had a bolder idea." He created chaos and then let his people, who were discovered by our spies during the day, escape. He created such an illusion. Then, the people hidden in the dark would immediately kill them. What? Hearing this, Li Shimin stood up in shock. To silence the witness. He had thought about this before. But he didn't expect these people to be so bold and have a backup plan. At the thought of the people hidden in the dark, Li Shimin's forehead instantly broke out in a cold sweat. He hurriedly asked, "Qianer, do you mean there are hidden killers in the city?" Although it seemed a little strange, this killer. Could it be that the mysterious man really planned to? If Fengzi couldn't find the underground palace tonight, or if the underground palace was really not taken seriously, it would. Chunming Gate was on fire. The Yanqing Gate and the Yanping Gate were on fire. What's more, the Tunghua Gate was unimpeded. If they didn't set up any defenses, wouldn't the entire Chang'an fall tonight? And the city gates were on fire. Obviously, someone had already infiltrated the city defense army. With Yu Qigong's ability, it was impossible for him not to know these things. Then, if that person knew Yu Qigong, he would definitely know tonight that Yu Qigong wouldn't let these people out of the city. Then what on earth was he thinking? Li Shimin looked at the dancing candlelight, but he didn't have any clue. But in a flash, Li Shimin thought of an extremely terrible thing. That was the secret passage. If he didn't send Qin Xiong to the underground palace tonight, wouldn't it mean that these people were preparing to? At the thought of this, Li Shimin instantly thought of all the problems. That is, if these people really wanted to eliminate the root of the problem and erase all traces of the mysterious lord. Li Shimin's face suddenly changed and he asked, "Qianer, what you said, did you think of it yourself or Fengzi?" Li Chengqian said with a serious face, "Fengzi just said that there might be a small episode in Chang'an City tonight, but he didn't say it clearly. It seems that he told me so much just to let me judge for myself. I'm sure that tonight will be the day of the death of these people we found today. Hearing this, Li Shimin suddenly stood up and hurriedly shouted, "If your guess is right, then tonight, someone is going to assassinate Wang Jun." Seeing this, Li Chengqian hurriedly said, "Imperial Father, this son thought that since these people could think of such a method, they must have already made arrangements in the imperial prison. Therefore, this son thought that why don't we use the method in the underground palace to make arrangements in the imperial prison, and then wait for their arrival. At the same time, we will first transfer this Wang junkie and replace him with a fake?" Li Shimin's eyes instantly lit up. He really had a new level of respect for Li Chengqian. He did not expect that he could think of such a plan that even he had not thought of. Li Shimin patted Li Chengqian's shoulder with some gratification. "Not bad, my family's Qian, has grown up. You have handled this matter well. Then, we will leave this matter to you. In the morning court tomorrow, there will definitely be ministers who will make a move because of today's matter. We will leave all of this to you." For the first time, Li Chengqian's breathing became hurried. He was so excited that his face was flushed red. He hurriedly bowed and said, "This son obeys the decree." Li Shimin yawned and said, "All right, we will not care about tonight. You go and take care of everything." After Li Chengqian left, without knowing when, Empress Zhongsun appeared at the door of the imperial study, holding a large white frame in her hand. Seeing Li Shimin like this, Zhongsun Wugo smiled faintly and said, "Tian'er has grown up. This time he can finally share some of the pressure with you." Li Shimin laughed and said, "This is all thanks to Fengzi. This kid really has a way. We were really worried that Tian'er would not be able to take on big responsibilities because of his personality. Today it seems that Tian'er has really grown up. He did well in this matter. Of course, if it was not for Fengzi's intention, he would not have grown so much. However, we feel that Tian'er still needs some training." Zhongsun Wugo was stunned when she heard this. "Second brother, you mean to let Tian'er go to the border?" Li Shimin nodded and said, "When this matter is over, we will personally go and see the power of the things Fengzi made. Then, we will let Tian'er go to the front line to train." Empress Zhongsun Wugo's face instantly changed when she heard this. If the news of the crown prince going to the border were to spread, it would inevitably shake the imperial court and cause unrest. Thinking of this, Empress Zhongsun Wugo turned pale with fright. "Second brother, isn't this a bit abrupt? Even if you agree, the ministers in the imperial court will definitely not agree. Moreover, although the crown prince guarding the border can increase the morale, if there is any mistake, then what should we do?" Li Shimin was also somewhat hesitant at this time. After thinking for a while, he said, "Let's wait until this matter is over." Chapter 1536. Yu Qigong's head was about to explode. Tonight's fire was strange to begin with, and now there were so many corpses, including the corpses of more than 30 officials. "Have you investigated the identities of the 100 or so corpses here? Also tell me, how did these people die?" Niu Weili was trembling all over. More than 100 corpses. Niu Weili glanced at the place where thick smoke was still rising behind him, and his eyelids twitched. This was the place closest to the imperial palace, and also the harshest place in Chang'an. Yet so many people had died here. Then who killed them? Suddenly, Niu Weili thought of something terrifying. The question was who killed these people. However, he didn't have time to think about it. He quickly recounted what had just happened, and the brigadier general's account was almost the same as his. Yu Qigong was silent for a moment when he heard this. Then he glanced at the fire in the darkness and said, All of you go down and secretly investigate all suspicious people, especially those in the fire. If there is anyone suspicious, you can kill them first and report later. If you can capture them alive for Lao Tzu. As long as they can talk and breathe, it's fine. After that, Yu Qigong shouted angrily at the city gates. Old man Yu Qigong, open the gates. As soon as he entered the city gates, Yu Qigong spurred his panting warhorse as if he was flying. He raised the great general's token high up in the air and galloped towards the imperial study. Before Yu Qigong reached the gate of heaven influence, he saw a group of people holding torches high. Among them was a faintly discernible couch. Yu Qigong was stunned and quickly pulled on the reins. Did the emperor come out personally? Yu Qigong's movements and the neighing of the horses attracted the attention of the person on the couch. He hurriedly shouted, "Are you General Yu Qi?" Yu Qigong was stunned. He quickly said, "Greetings, Your Highness. What is the matter? Something happened in the city. I'm going to report to the emperor." When Li Chengqian heard this, he waved his hand to have the group stop. He simply flipped over and asked for a horse from one of the guards. He pouted at Yu Qigong and said, "Imperial Father has given me full authority over this matter." "Uncle, what do you mean by something happening outside the city?" Yu Qigong looked in the direction of Taiji Palace with some surprise, then looked at the soft couch that belonged to the emperor. He said, "Chang'an, those people that were discovered by spies earlier today have all been killed. And right at the time of the fire." Hearing this, Li Chengqian nodded, not showing any surprise. Yu Qigong couldn't help but feel displeased. "You brat, why are you putting on airs here?" He hurriedly said, "Your Highness, many of them are court officials. What do you think we should do?" Yu Qigong's voice was a little heavy. Tonight, there was such a huge commotion outside the city, but it still didn't cause the slightest ripple. It was as if what happened outside the city had nothing to do with this place. At this moment, translator, Transin editor, Transin as the fire in Chang'an city was gradually extinguished. The chirping of insects near the prison stopped abruptly as if someone had grabbed their throats. A moment later, in the dark, one by one, the figures slowly approached the heavenly prison. Then they killed all the guards in an instant and entered the heavenly prison in a hurry. In an instant, more than 100 people had entered the heavenly prison. The moment these people entered the heavenly prison, a voice rang out. Li Chengqian, who was in an attic not far away, looked at Wang Junqi, who was tied to a pillar with scars all over his body, with a smile and said, "Uncle Wang, your colleagues are really loyal. If I had come a little later tonight, perhaps you would have been able to go home." Woo woo woo. Wang Junqi saw what happened at the gate of the prison through the bushes. The blue veins on his forehead were exposed. He didn't know the purpose of these people, but if they came, they would definitely not return. He had always underestimated Li Chengqian. He even seemed to suddenly realize that the Lord seemed to have underestimated the crown prince. Was this still the indecisive crown prince who always did things indecisively? Just a few moments ago, Li Chengqian had brought several hundred chamberlains of imperial insignia, along with a man who bore some resemblance to him, and whose face had been smashed into smithereens to where he was previously sitting. All of the prisoners in the imperial prison had been replaced by the chamberlains of imperial insignia. Without a doubt, something had happened. These people were no different from the people in the underground palace. At this moment, looking at the hundreds of Jinwu guards that Li Chengqian prepared in this small building, he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Li Chengqian ignored him and didn't ask what these people were here for. He waved his hand and said, "Let's go down and have a look. Send the message that we can draw in the net." Following Li Chengqian's order, in an instant, the leader of the personal guards beside him hurriedly whistled into the darkness. The next moment, the sound of a nightingale chirping could be heard. All the people who had arranged here in advance quickly surrounded the prison. There were even hundreds of city guards and garrison troops. It could be said that the prison at this time was the real prison. Fortunately, he had already planned this beforehand. This was the first time he had gained his father's trust, and he was able to handle this matter perfectly. At the thought of tomorrow morning's court session, if he were to say that he had dealt with today's matter, then all the officials hurry up and interrogate Wang Junqi and these people before dawn, except for Wang Junqi. I don't care if they're dead or alive. After giving the order, Li Chengqian waved his hand, and Wang Junqi was brought into the Eastern Palace alone. This was the safest place. In comparison, as soon as he entered the Eastern Palace, Li Chengqian did not make things difficult for Wang Junqi. Instead, he gave him a table full of food and wine. Although the ropes were not untied, there were still 3 imperial guards behind Wang Junqi, holding sharp blades in their hands, looking at him warily. Li Chengqian lit a cigarette and handed it to Wang Junqi. Seeing Wang Junqi's wariness, he said with a smile, "Uncle Wang, when we were in Wagong, you taught me how to ride a horse. In the blink of an eye, so many years have passed. Although today is somewhat abrupt, this little nephew still has to do his part as a host. It's almost dawn. How about we eat and drink a little?" Seeing this, although Wang Junqi was still wary, he gritted his teeth and took the cigarette in his mouth. Since he was going to die anyway, he was also very surprised as to why Li Chengqian would suddenly come up with such a big plan. When this brat was on the mountain, he was as timid as a mouse. Moreover, he was always timid in everything he did. Even in court, he was like this. But what was going on today? Could it be that Zhang Feng was the mastermind behind all this? Thinking of this, and thinking of the words of those people in prison, Wang Junqi also wanted to see what Li Chengqian could do. He simply shook his hand that was tied up with hemp rope. Li Chengqian understood, and had someone loosen the rope for him. Then he said, "Uncle Wang, this is all prepared for you. Come and have a taste. This is good stuff. Thinking back to when we were in Wagong, I knew that you liked wine. This is tiger jerky that I purposely got from my master. And there's also his precious wine." Wang Junqi rubbed his sore elbow and simply let go of his stomach to eat and drink. After all, even if he wanted to die, he had to eat his fill and have the strength to do so. Seeing Wang Junqi like this, Li Chengqian raised his cup and chatted with Wang Junqi. Generally, they chatted about the past on the mountain and in the army. Slowly, Wang Junqi's wariness was lowered. Just at this moment, Li Chengqian changed the topic inside. "Uncle Wang, you also don't want to see the world change, right? Thinking back to when you were on the mountain, you always wanted a world of peace. But you see," Wang Junqi was stunned. He slowly put down the wine cup in his hand. Was this still the same Duke of Qin who was willing to starve himself for 3 days for the sake of his brother? At this moment, Wang Junqi's heart was bleeding as he looked at Li Chengqian and the golden guards who were whispering their reports. He didn't know what had happened in that prison. He didn't want to guess. After all, the crown prince had just said that he didn't care if they lived or died. Giggle. Along with the loud and clear crow of a rooster, the eastern horizon slowly turned white. At the same time, the sound of the clock slowly rang. Li Chengqian slowly stood up and stretched. He looked at the eastern horizon and said slowly, "Uncle Wang, we've known each other for so many years. Do you know why I'm saying so much tonight? This is because Imperial Father had already thought of everything. Do you think he didn't know about the appearance of that underground palace and the circulation of large quantities of gold? Imperial Father was just a little hesitant about this person and wanted to give him a chance. Imperial Father was just playing around, but he didn't expect to meet you tonight." As he spoke, Li Chengqian put away the smile on his face. With a grave expression, he waved his hand and dismissed everyone. He personally removed the ropes and shackles from Wang Junqi's hands and said, "Uncle Wang, after Imperial Father found out about this, he fainted and shackled you. After all, you were all brothers who went through fire and water together. Half of the Tang dynasty belongs to you. Last time at Tongguan, more than 50 civil officials joined together to impeach you. Moreover, you know about the existence of Wagong and the current situation in the imperial court. Last time, Imperial Father withstood the pressure and didn't sleep for 3 consecutive days before forcibly suppressing this matter. It was only to deal with those civil officials that he stripped you of your title and meritorious service. However, Imperial Father was protecting you. Moreover, go and take a look at Wagong. Not a single one of your brothers is missing. They've all returned. Wang Junqi's eyes flickered slightly as he lowered his head. No one knew what he was thinking, but Li Chengqian couldn't help but be overjoyed. Because this was exactly what he wanted. What he wanted was for Wang Junqi to lose his composure. In fact, the people in the prison didn't say anything. In the morning, he had arranged for them to come and report false information every once in a while. The purpose was actually for this moment. It was to let Wang Junqi destroy his own psychological defenses. This was the most profound topic in the psychology textbook. In the past, Li Chengqian really didn't know about this. But today, after Zhang Feng explained the mysteries behind it to him, as well as the concept of a person's heart as a battlefield, Li Chengqian instantly seemed to understand the principles behind it. This seemed to be the way of an emperor.